Welcome back to Splice Splatter, the film podcast presented by the Jean Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're classic horror.
It's modern gore.
We're your hosts. I'm Siena.
And I'm Al.
It feels so much better now that we have like a...
We got a thing down.
We've got a thing down. A year and a half in, we finally nailed it.
It's so long. We're talking about, you guys always know what the titles, but we're talking about Serial Mom and the Others.
Yeah, we're doing a Mother's Day pairing.
Which just happened.
Just
if you celebrate, if you're like me and you don't,
then this is
fuck
actually
the moms,
really good pairing for you because this is
I'm the mama.
Yeah.
We're the mamas because we have we're pet mamas.
We are pet mamas. Yeah.
Pet daddies.
Pet dads, yeah. I very much think of myself as Theodore's pet dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I like withhold attention in certain situations when she's like meowing to try and distract me from things. I'm like, you've got to wait your turn. And I feel like that's very dad behavior. So I'm definitely pet dad, not pet mom.
Aww. Well, happy whatever.
Happy
Monday.
Whatever. Yeah. Happy Monday, everybody.
Start of the week.
We were talking about both being especially nervous for this. There are a couple of different reasons. One is that both of us had a very hard time finding information for our films.
Yeah.
Worked real fucking hard on it. Was not expecting it to be difficult. Yeah. Especially, I thought sources. Yours at least would have more sources.
You would think I would think John Waters would have a ton. I was telling Sienna, like, I have the most sources, the most interviews I've ever read, but the interviews were so fluff and short.
Yes!
And short interviews.
Oh, interesting.
Too. See, they were fluffy. They were kind of just like, I didn't get information. It was like more like feelings, and it really wasn't talking too much about one. And like, maybe I wasn't looking at the right sources, but I feel like I did the IMDb. I go through, I break down the skeleton. I get like all my basics there. And I went into the interviews, would look up things specific, and it was like no more information that I already knew.
Yeah. And I was particularly shocked for a film that we're going to talk about. This had like a huge budget, huge for our scale. Hollywood stars.
Yeah.
Did great business at the awards. Like this, it has all of the things that you associate with a film that's very well documented. It also, there's a Criterion edition. There's been essays written about it.
Wow.
And I read so many like critical theory pieces about this film, and they all recycled like the same 3 quotes from the director.
Wild.
And I was like, and then I went to go find where those 3 quotes are from. They were from the DVD bonus features, and that's like the only things that the director says on it. There's like nothing. There's fucking nothing.
So yeah, this is gonna be a short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
We're just vibing out here today, which honestly, it's like we're getting ticking into like summer, and I'm just like
our brains are on vacation.
Truly. So I'm like okay with that this week. We have some heavy hitters, some are light.
I also feel like particularly, I was thinking about our Mother's Day pairing last year, which was Psycho and Rosemary's Baby, and like
beefy.
The beefiest of beefies, and like it almost feels nice to give the moms a break this year.
Yeah, for sure. That's how I kind of feel too. I was like, what did we do last year? Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
Especially because I think both of those films are much kinder to mothers than these two. These are very very anti-mother Mother's Day films.
I was gonna say, just hopping like kind of into it because you're going first. Like watch experience. I saw this in theaters when it came out.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
And this
must have been amazing to see on the big screen.
Phenomenal. I remember loving it. This was like a film that I feel like I watched all the fucking time, but it's been so long that my brain kind of forgot. Like I was like, okay, I was like, they're ghosts, right? But I couldn't remember. I was like, there's something else I'm missing. There's the murder aspect.
Yes, which I want to talk about.
Okay,
that's so like part of my film theory rant corner.
Yeah, these are both murder moms.
Murder moms. Yeah, which is very different from what we did last time. Last time, we have other people blaming the moms for murder, but the moms aren't the ones actually committing the murders. Yeah. This time, the moms are the ones committing all the violence, which was kind of satisfying. I liked it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. Did you... before we jump in, I just have to ask, because Serial Mom was my recommendation for you. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was great.
Okay,
it was
fantastic.
Really easy. I think, it's the most commercial John Waters film. He calls it the most commercial John Waters film because he was like, he was working with a studio for the first time. So it was fun seeing baby Matthew Lillard.
He looks 5 years old.
That long hair.
Yeah.
like, because he got out of that era real quick, and I feel like he did, like, mature overnight.
Yeah. He's never looked more like cartoon Shaggy, though, than in this film.
Yeah. He just looks, like, poreless, too.
You
know what I mean? Like, that's how fresh he is to the world. He doesn't even have a pore. So it was, like, super fun and just stupid and so much lighter, weirdly, than yours.
Oh, yeah. The tonal difference between these
is
two
extreme. What you'll get whiplash if you do these as a double feature.
Yeah, which I know. I watched Serial Mom first, and it was like such a dark note to end on, to go from Serial Mom to the others.
To weeping at the end of yours. Yeah, absolutely.
Because, well, the others did make me cry. Like, that's, again, part of why I love this film. It's a sad fucking horror movie.
It really is. It's still held up. Both these held up in, like, very fun, bonkers, different ways.
Drastically different ways, but both really... Anyway, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because I was really worried, particularly when you said that you couldn't find much for notes. I was worried that you just had, like, a horrible experience.
It was just not horrible watch experience. But watching yours in the rain last night with a thunderstorm going on. It was so good.
Real spooky. All cuddled up under the blanket.
You just smell in the rain. Hail coming in, had to shut the door.
Perfect.
But,
fantastic.
These were fun. I'm so happy we finally get to talk about the others. Even if it's not a lot of backstory, we can just gush about it.
Well, especially, this is part of what I want to talk about with it, is I feel like this has already, this film is from 2001. It's only 24 years old. I feel like it has, I know.
Ew. Siena.
Sorry. But I feel like it's already been elevated to, like, the level of horror prestige that, like, this gets talked about in conversation with things like The Shining, and I think it absolutely deserves to.
I think so too,
It's on that level. I think this is one of those films that 50 years from now is gonna be remembered as one of the best films of this century.
It, like, beautifully unfolds itself.
It really does. And it's such a... There are so many ways that this film could not succeed. That this film could feel cheesy, that it could telegraph too easily, which I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But there are so many points at which, because it's actually a really simple premise.
That's what I was thinking too. It's just like, you think of other films where it's like, oh, they're ghosts. It's like Beetlejuice. Right. You have the Sixth Sense.
Right.
Like, which
The Sixth Sense comes up a lot in reviews of this film, especially.
But so different.
So different. And trying to do such different things. Yeah. Again, particularly because of the murder.
That little old thing.
That little old thing. The murdering moms. But yeah, I think this is one that has been kind of on my wish list for the podcast for a long time because of that. And it's one that I know I said I really wanted to revisit because it was a big reference point for my movie. And it's weird to say that because I have not watched this since I first saw it in high school.
Oh, wow. But so you're really removed from it a little bit.
Yeah. It really stuck with me though. The visuals, feeling of it, the visual darkness of it, which normally I get really frustrated with a movie that's overly dark, but this is
also why you hated Nosferatu.
Listen, yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, but it's like the way they let light in certain moments though is
there are so many shots in this movie where Nicole Kidman's face looks like a crescent moon emerging out of the darkness, where like they've so well lit just the very edges of her face, and she's got such a wonderfully sharp, angular face for film to begin with, that it just really, on like a geometric, just purely abstracted visual level, is just really satisfying and like painterly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now that I'm done gushing about it, I have one tidbit for you. Do you have a tidbit to lead us in with?
I do, but I think it's more of like about my
for yours.
So
okay, fantastic.
I sometimes have a hard time. I'll wait for mine.
Wonderful.
We'll lead my film in.
Okay, so I had trouble picking what would be the tidbit for this because again, not a lot of stuff that's like easily. Most of the stuff that I found out about this film that really interested me couldn't be kind of divorced from the context of the whole very easily. But the one thing I found that could, I had to bring in a visual support for.
Oh.
Because we have, I think, one of the creepiest director cameos that we've yet encountered in this film. And it comes when, okay, let me just pause real quick and say, I know we've kind of spoiled it a little bit, but like, don't listen to this podcast before watching the others.
Yeah.
Like, I know we say that we say that for a lot of our films, but this one in particular, you can't. It just will not be the same kind of satisfying experience.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when Grace is looking through the book of death portraits, you know, there's 3 men kind of in bed in a row together. Here is our director and a picture of him underneath, so you can see which one's him.
I'm so bad with facial rec. Is he the one on the right?
He's the one on the right. Okay. Yeah, the one with the mustache.
Oh my god, amazing.
And one of the other men in that picture is his screenwriting collaborator from several other projects.
Oh, nice.
So it's I love that he posed all of them together in bed. Dead. Yeah.
He's like, this is cute.
Yeah, this is how I want to be remembered. Yeah. So just one, and also he's only 28 years old at the time he makes this.
Oh my gosh,
which
young.
Just yeah,
because Darren Stein, who we just talked about too, was like 20, 28 at the time.
And part of what is so shocking to me about that is this is his 3rd film at 28. So the boy is just cranking them out. He has his first film is called Thesis, and I want to say that one comes out in 96. Then he makes Abre los ojos, Open Your Eyes, which this is a weird little tangent, but I promise it's going somewhere. So Abre los ojos gets remade in English with the same lead actress, Penelope Cruz, under a completely different title. I didn't know these films were connected at all. Wow. It gets remade as the Tom Cruise vehicle, Vanilla Sky.
No.
Yes, that's Abre los ojos. Those are the same films, which is even weirder because, of course, Tom Cruise, married to Nicole Kidman at the time this film is being produced, and is an executive producer on this film.
Yeah,
and they finalized their divorce 2 days before the premiere of this film.
Whoa.
And yet still show up at it together, both of them. So they've like put on a...
Yeah.
They were able to put it to the side at least a little bit. But
for as weird as he is, he does seem very professional.
Yeah. He at least was able to separate that out. Yeah. But like, I think this is the last project they collaborate on together. And all of this. Yeah. Great. Fantastic.
Wild. Yeah. The executive producer, I saw, like, I looked up during that moment because I was making like a little craft in the beginning.
Love.
I feel like I knew this film, and then I was like, wait, no, I forgot.
Yeah, I need to watch.
And I looked up, and it was like right when his name flashed. I was like, what the fuck?
So weird. Yeah,
that makes sense. Vanilla Sky,
which also I think is part of why. This is my suspicion, is that this may be part of why the special features for this movie are so fluffy, because a lot of them are interviews with EP Tom Cruise.
Oh.
A lot of it is Tom Cruise getting interviewed about this movie, like more than it should be. And he looks so uncomfortable in all of them. And like all he'll say is just like, yeah, Nicole's great.
Really?
He's great. It's a compelling story. And just kind of like grimaces at the camera.
Oh, God. I gotta watch these. My theory behind that, too, like on top of probably absolutely that.
Yeah.
I feel like when we just started to get like DVDs and bonus features and everything, like no one knew what to do with those.
Yeah.
So I feel like they like edited them down because they would be in like little 1 to 2 minute segments on DVDs to start with. So I feel like this weird time of like the early 2000s, they like, for going into like digital and like putting things on like online and things, they really didn't know how to compress, so it was all fluff, and so therefore I don't feel like they documented things correctly.
Oh, they did not.
And then we don't have stuff because of that reason. They were like, no, we'll just record it. We're not going to document anything else any other way.
So right, and this is part of why this was the weirdest special features bonus that I have ever watched. Like, not only these uncomfortable Tom Cruise interviews, but there's like large chunks where they're like demonstrating how some of the special effects were done, but there's no like voiceover or narrative, so it's just like
it's just clips of them just doing a thing.
It's just like, 5 minutes of them doing a thing in silence. Like there's like a 10-minute segment on kids with the disease that's featured in this movie of like interviewing families, which we will talk about that. And it's like interesting that they put it there, but like this has nothing to do about how the movie was made.
Yeah. I don't think they knew what the fuck to do. They were like,
so right.
Let's make these cute little featurettes.
Yeah.
What's that?
What is that? I don't know. As long as we have an extra 50 minutes of content to put out there, who cares what's in there?
Yeah.
So it was not well done.
Got it.
Yeah, that's
Isn't it
such a
weird?
good
I feel
point.
like it just feels this I know for Serial Mom, I think there was just like a commentary over it, and I don't have the DVD. And which I gotta start buying those before.
I also imagine John Waters' commentary would not give you a whole lot of information about the making of the film.
No. Even in his interviews, there's just like he doesn't really.
That's not what he's most interested in. I don't think.
No, he likes. I don't know. Yeah, the way he kind of talks in interviews is.
I love him so much.
I do too.
I'm so glad we're finally covering a John Waters movie because I just, as we talked about before, horrifying doesn't often make horror.
Sure,
but it's satisfying to see him do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
that's great.
Let me lead us back into the others. I brought in a whole bunch of taglines because actually. Ooh. Basically, all of the taglines for this movie I thought were fantastic. So I want to see which you like best. We have, "Sooner or later she'll see them, then everything will be different." Ooh. So the quote from Mrs. Mills.
Yeah.
"Sometimes the world of the living gets mixed up with the world of the dead." Another Mrs. Mills quote.
Yeah.
"Sooner or later they will find you," which is, I think...
Isn't that a Mrs. Mills too?
Yes.
She's outside the door.
Everything is Mrs. Mills. All of the posters are just Mrs. Mills.
I love her in this.
She's
so
so good. Yeah. "How do you keep them out when they've already invited themselves in?" Which,
I like that one a lot.
And then my personal favorite, "Close every door, turn off every light, and look for the others."
Ooh, oh, that's fun because it has the title in it.
It has the title in it.
Those are all really good.
They're all good. Yeah.
I like the one before that one.
The "How do you keep them out when they've already invited themselves in?" Very vampiric vibes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, maybe that doesn't sum up the movie great.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hitting on the gothic.
Yeah,
which is such a gothic movie. So as I was watching it, I was thinking like another one this could have been paired with this Crimson Peak. It feels very like of a 100% piece with that, which we'll talk about. How it gets the setting and time period that it does, because neither of those were where it was originally supposed to, where or when it was originally supposed to take place. So we'll talk about that, but put a pin in it. This film is written, directed, and scored by Alejandro Amenábar, which I just want to put a pin in. Every time I heard American interviews of him, they pronounce his name Amenábar. There is an accent on that A, and so my Spanish brain is telling me it has to be Amenábar. Yeah. I couldn't find any clips of him pronouncing his own name to double check. So I'm just...
Interviews need to have the directors introduce themselves.
Introduce themselves with their own name. Tell us how you want to pronounce. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to call him Alejandro. That's what we're going to do to get past this. I'm sorry. So... very John Carpenter-esque move. He's composing the whole score. He's done this for basically all of his films, and he's continued working. So he also, I didn't realize he was the one who did the Rachel Weisz movie Agora from 2009. I don't remember if you remember that one, but that, I think, probably because of Rachel Weisz, made a very big impact on teenage Siena. Yeah. So he is a Spanish-Chilean director, born in Chile. He and his family evacuate to Spain, I think 2 weeks before the coup, when he is only 18 months old. And this becomes put a pin in that, because this becomes an important part of this story and where it comes from. So we already talked about the Tom Cruise Vanilla Sky crossover. Moving into the cast, we have Nicole Kidman as Grace Stewart. Of course, we know and love her as Satine in Moulin Rouge. That to me is always going to be like the iconic Nicole Kidman role. Virginia Woolf in The Hours, Romy in Baby Girl recently, Joanna in Stepford Wives, which I know we both love. She's in Practical Magic. She's in Eyes Wide Shut. And even though I think she often shows up as redhead, I very much think of her as like the modern working actress who has the most like classic Hitchcockian icy blonde energy.
Me too.
Like she very much, she gives like Grace Kelly or like she's
got
straight out of that.
A look about her that's so classic and timeless. Yeah, I think blonde too.
And we'll talk a lot about the kind of the brittleness that she brings to this role and where that came from, but put a pin in Nicole, basically. We have so many pins.
Stab.
We have Fionnuala Flanagan as Bertha Mills. She's still working at 83, which I thought was amazing. She was recently in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. She's the grandma in that. She's Eileen in The Guard. She's in The Invention of Lying. She's in Yes Man. She's in Four Brothers. And that means she was only 59 when this movie came out, which to me, there's something about her performance that feels really ancient.
Yeah, she had a way soul. I would have not guessed.
Yeah. The makeup's fantastic. Yeah. Christopher Eccleston as Charles. Of course, he's probably best known as the 9th Doctor on Doctor Who. He's also in 28 Days Later. He was in The Leftovers. He's in Thor: The Dark World. And we also saw him in Existence, which I completely forgot about. Little crossover there. We have Eric Sykes as Edmund Tuttle. He's best known as Frank Bryce from The Goblet of Fire, but he's also the voice of the trumpet in Teletubbies, which I think is a much better thing to be known for.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I put that in just to shout that out.
I love the Teletubbies.
And he also, a little bit of a spooky Easter egg, his character is named after the groundskeeper in the 1980 movie The Changeling, who's also named Mr. Tuttle, and The Changeling is a reference point that Alejandro mentions in interviews. Another one that I want to watch sometime.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so.
Let's see. I have not seen it. I've got it on our Letterboxd to watch list.
Okay, yeah. Watch the trailer.
It's, I think, one of those that's very like your favorite horror director's favorite horror movie. Like it's people in horror really like it, but I feel like it hasn't quite kind of like made it to the mainstream yet, which makes me very curious to watch it. But so moving into background, while this movie is, you know, mainly ghost on ghost action, shall we say, rather than ghost on living, a lot of people watch this and are like, this is clearly based on The Turn of the Screw, which I think you kind of can't have a story about ghosts and Victorian children and not have Turn of the Screw come up.
Why does Turn of the Screw sound so familiar to me?
Henry James, it gets adapted as is it Haunting of Bly Manor? Is that the one that's Turn of the Screw season? I think it's Bly Manor.
Okay. Then that's where
there's a Flanagan adaptation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's not under the same name, but that would be the most familiar. I'm pretty sure it's that. It's the one that has Peter Quint, that like scary groundskeeper. Ringing any bells? No? Great. No. Moving on. So, like, I basically, yes? Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The 35th adaptation.
The 35th
adaptation.
Yeah. Oh. It's, The Innocents is also an adaptation of it, so which is another big reference point for this film.
This all makes so much sense.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ties to the history of Gothic ghost stories. We also, I believe, carry The Turn of the Screw at Beastly. There's a lot of different editions of it with different introductions. So it's like one that you can read in an afternoon. It's very nice.
Just a light read.
Zip through it. So I don't think you can kind of like make this kind of story without getting Henry James comparisons. There's also a pretty direct nod in the name, in that in The Turn of the Screw, the ghost servants are called the Others. So there's, you know, it's clearly something he was referencing. Yeah. But let's talk about some more obscure things that I had no idea were kind of bubbling to the surface in this film. So there's also, and this I'm now desperate to watch because let me just say it. There is an episode of the British TV series Armchair Theatre from 1970 called The Others that's about a woman who starts seeing a Victorian child in her home that the children can see but her husband can't. And I couldn't find any official comments saying that one was inspired by the other or an authorized adaptation of the other. And now I'm fascinated. But there are a whole lot of comments from people who've seen that episode of Armchair Theatre saying that it is basically the same plot.
That's funny.
And it's under the same name. Yeah. And so I'm like, how did this? Yeah. There's nothing in the credits saying like special thanks to Armchair Theatre or anything. So I'm really fascinated by how how that happened, legally speaking. There's also, you know how we're kind of led into the movie in darkness very appropriately with Nicole Kidman saying, are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. At the beginning. That is almost word for word the start of the BBC radio show Listen with Mother, which aired from 1950 to 1982. So there's also like, for again a Chilean Spanish director, he's pulling on a lot of kind of like deep cuts from English culture. And according to IMDb, Amenabar wrote the script in Spanish and then translated it into English, which is just incredibly impressive to me. I'm always wondering about this with directors who are working across a language barrier. And one of the things that he talks about in interviews is that he basically didn't speak English at all at the time that he embarked on this project. He essentially taught himself English to direct this film. Again, 28 years old. And it's like, well, I guess I'll just learn a new language.
Come on, brain.
I know. He is
wild. How impressive.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so he very much, he has a translator on set in case that's needed.
Yeah.
He also, there are translators in the process of kind of anglifying the script, making it feel more based in English culture, kind of getting the slang from that period correct, all of that stuff, because it really does feel so specific to the time and place that this is taking place. But it's still just incredibly impressive to me that all of this was coming from somebody who started the process not even speaking the language. And then by the time he's doing special features on the DVD, he's giving all of his interviews in English.
That's why. I mean, truly immersed. Like when you're immersed like that,
it's incredible. But this film wasn't shot in England. It was shot in Spain.
Was it?
And so when you watch the special features, all of the cast, all of the crew are communicating in Spanish.
Amazing.
In like Castilian Spanish. And so he's code switching on set, going back and forth between speaking in Spanish to the crew and in English to the cast, which is also just like,
to keep your like lines
it's
straight.
So like
also do an American story too. I think it's fascinating that he wanted to do that and not been a Spanish film, which I feel like
we're gonna talk about that. We're getting to it. Yep, I'm setting us up.
Okay, wild.
Yeah. So, and this is, you just gave me a perfect segue. The script was originally all in Spanish and set in Chile, kind of around, I think it was supposed to be set around the time that his family escaped the coup.
Sure.
And as he starts passing it around to producers, one of the producers is like, this feels like such a classic Gothic ghost story. It feels like this is meant to take place in England. But he doesn't want to set it in England in particular because he wants the kind of religious conflict that's happening in a place like the Channel Islands where he sets it, where there's a combination of Catholic and Protestant culture coming in from England and France.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how he ends up coming to the Channel Islands. And how he ends up picking World War II is literally just because he's like, well, I need the husband to go away. What could make the husband go away? War. And so that's how you get...
What is it good for? Plot.
True. Oh my God. You're killing me, Al.
Sorry. We gotta fill the time. Remember, we got short notes.
It's true. We're just stalling here. He also draws substantially from his childhood fears, which we love when a director does that. Reminds me very much of Hausu. And so this is one of those like 3 quotes that I found recycled over and over again throughout interviews. Is he says, quote, "My childhood was beset by fears. Fear of the dark, fear of half-open doors, fear of closets, and generally speaking, fear of anything that could conceal someone or something." Ooh. Which, like, so well said. Also, again, this guy just started speaking English like a year ago.
And then he's like speaking like that.
Yeah, and he speaks better than I do.
Saves some for the rest.
I know.
And scored the fucking thing.
Which we're going to talk about.
Gross.
He's incredibly talented.
Wow.
He also apparently, I found one interview where he talks about it sounds like his parents took him to a spiritualist session in Chile before he left, which, like, he would have been a baby, but it sounds like he has some kind of, either his parents told him enough stories from it, or he has enough of, like, a faint memory of it that was something he incorporated into the script too, which also the idea of this, like, faint early childhood memory of a seance essentially is like, that definitely feels like the vibe that this film is giving us. And so he takes all of these references and kind of puts them in the stew alongside a bunch of very carefully chosen suspense movies. So he's referencing The Haunting, Hitchcock's Rebecca, The Innocents, Night of the Hunter. You know, there's also stuff like The Shining thrown in there, but a lot of what he's drawing from are these kind of like gothic sad romances almost. Like, thinking about Rebecca in particular makes a lot of sense with the tone of this. So moving into kind of themes, approach, history, backstory. As I mentioned, the disease that the children have in this film, it is a real disease. It is called xeroderma pigmentosum, a name which would have existed at the time the story takes place. So it interests me that the characters do not use that. But some of the worst symptoms that it causes are actually to the eyes as well as the skin, because, you know, eyes are sensitive to light the same way that skin is. And so it can cause burns on the eyes, which is something that it's so horrifying. But that in particular felt like an important thing to keep in mind in a story that is so much about what is seen and what is unseen, and like the act of seeing. That this disease they have, even though what the mom is most scared of is how it can affect their skin, it's also, it could blind them. And we have a blind character, obviously the blind seer at the end. So just, you know, a little bit of a tie-in there. Little foreshadowing corner. Some of these came from IMDb. Some were things that I took notes of as I was watching. This film, you know, particularly revisiting it once you know what the twist is, it is so satisfying seeing all the ways that it kind of breadcrumbs it through the narrative. So, you know, when Grace first loads the gun, you see this kind of moment where she's pausing and knowing it's like she's having a recollection of,
why does that, like, deja vu? It's like,
why does that feel familiar? When the dad returns coming out of the fog, you hear chains clanking, and the children have told us that what are ghosts? They're, you know, these figures in sheets with clanking chains. And so he walks out and you hear clanking chains. Same when he comes into the bedroom, you hear this faint sound of metal clanking.
Shut up, I missed that.
When Mrs. Mills is, when they're out in the lawn talking about the gravestone, the one that she covers up has a Celtic cross on it. We later find out that's hers. Celtic cross, she's the only one with an Irish accent. Yep. So if you're really following through, you can kind of figure out at that point that that's her grave. With all those dinner table scenes we get, you never see a character swallow.
That's what, okay, when she threw out, I realized that looking back after she didn't take the pill and threw the water, because I was like, wait, has she ever
She never swallows.
Yeah.
We see characters put food in their mouths,
but we don't know what happens after.
We never see them swallow. And I noticed this time there's actually the very first time we see a character trying to eat is when the servants have first come back and Mrs. Mills makes toast for Anne, the little girl, and Anne takes a bite and says it tastes funny. And
gives you chills,
right? Well, it's like she can't eat anymore, so of course it tastes funny.
That's so sad. I don't want to be a ghost for that reason. Everything else seems cool. That not so much.
Just the not eating. That's the only problem. I also, watching it this time, it looked to me in the scene where Nicole is talking to Charles, to Christopher Eccleston, he has no reflection.
Okay, that's what I thought too. That's when he's on the bed, right? I was wondering. I was like, is he just sitting on the other side of the bed? Because I was like, that felt like such a specific shot, and I was like, are we meant to think like, oh, does he have a reflection?
Right,
no, that's on the other side. So it really was where he.
I think he has no reflection because it's pulling a little bit of trickery with the angle it's presenting us.
I think it makes you question, like I did. Like, is it?
It's.
You can't
I
see
think
him, or
it's
is he on the other
supposed to be unclear, but watching it back again, like trying to piece together the angles they shot it from.
Yeah.
What the part of the bed that they're showing us is the part we
he's-
then see him sitting on, because you can see the two pillows reflected and then the pillows behind him.
Okay, thank you for doing that, because I didn't pause.
That's
but it did get me.
I also think, the "don't breathe" line is kind of one of our first hints of a little bit of what's going on, but I also think as much as that tells us about the fact that she smothers her children, it's also the other characters die of tuberculosis, which is also trouble breathing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of works on two levels there. There's also, while Mrs. Mills is giving that line that then becomes one of the taglines about the dead and living getting mixed up, I noticed this time that there's two gas lamps behind her, and one kind of like flickers and blows out as she's talking, while the other one stays on as she's talking about the living and the dead getting mixed up. So there's like all of these little, visual, auditory Easter eggs that are telling you exactly what's happening, so that when you watch it back, I feel like I imagine that every time you watch it just becomes richer, because there are more things to find.
For sure. That's what's so fun. I was going to say the one that set me off when I said I couldn't remember really. I was like, what's the... I just had to refresh my brain. But it's Mrs. Mills, when they're looking at the dead portrait. She said something about like trapping souls, and this is how they live on. And I was like, oh, yep, nope. The photo thing, I remember that comes back into play. So like I think that's one of the earlier ones of all these too. I can only imagine there's
so
a
many.
bajillion more.
It makes me think of that scene in The Good Place where Michael is like leaving clues for them, and they're like, "We got all your 4 clues," and he's like, "Actually, I left you like 1,000, but like I'm glad you got there." It's very much that kind of feeling. Like, sure, Alejandro is leaving us 1,000 clues. If you pick up just 4, it'll be enough.
Bless you. No, I totally forgot about that. I still have to finish that show. I have like 2 episodes left.
Oh my god. The last 2 episodes of that show are devastating.
That's why I can't get there.
Yeah.
I told you, Buffy, that last episode of Buffy took me fucking forever, and I still regret it.
It's a really well done ending.
Yeah.
I can't go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, feel that.
Anyway, moving on into cast and crew production. So Nicole gets cast mainly based off of her performance in Gus Van Sant's To Die For, which I fucking love. Because she's filming this coming off the heels of Eyes Wide Shut. And so the fact that that's not the thing that gets referenced, but this indie Gus Van Sant film just makes my heart sing.
Yeah, that's fun.
And one of the biggest shockers to me in researching this film, Nicole Kidman tried to back out of the part.
Really?
So she is really excited about it based on the script. She's really enthusiastic doing her research. She flies to Madrid, where most of production takes place, and has kind of an emotional breakdown. She says that I have a quote from her. She like gets to Madrid and she's like, "Oh my god, this is so intense. I don't know if I can carry through with this." She says, "I was having nightmares and it had really seeped into my consciousness, particularly the ending,
Yeah.
She I think gets a little bit overwhelmed by how far this character is requiring her to go, and describes herself in interviews looking back on it as kind of resisting the role, and then comes around to it and is like, that ended up being really good for the performance because this character is so high strung and so brittle, and me constantly kind of trying to fight against Grace was really perfect for Grace. So it kind of, going back to Sissy Spacek last episode, what the actor is feeling ends up contributing to the part. And she ends up kind of describing it. There are all these really lovely quotes from both her and Alejandro about how they worked together on the film. And so she says, really, this film was about the two of us working together to create this woman, because she's in almost every frame of this movie, which, true, it's part of why this is such a bravura performance. It's, she oftentimes is playing against nothing and nobody. This is a film that's so much about absence. And so it's really requiring an enormous energy output from Nicole. And Alejandro, on his part, says about this that when an actor is playing such a tough role, quote, "A character who is who's playing a character who's most of the time suffering, you as the director have to go with her in the nightmare. And I just love
he sounds
that.
great.
Yeah,
and being so young and having that kind of.
He takes this very kind of even just watching him work on the set, he's very sort of soft spoken and calm and just he's kind of like constantly directly at Nicole's side. Just like very, very supportive energy. Casting child actors, of course, always a challenge. They're able to find Nicholas right away, which is fascinating.
He's phenomenal.
And also just has, can I just say, a terrifying face?
He's haunting.
He's a really haunting looking child. Yeah. Well, it's like his face is so round. It's
he does. He looks fake.
Yeah, there's something like a little bit uncanny valley about him in just like a perfect way for
I
this
love to
role.
know. I don't like kids, but I was like, oh my god, protect this little being.
He did so well. Yeah. And also again, the way that his face kind of emerges out of the darkness, it has this very like moon-like, like lunar quality that I just love. So they find him like immediately, and they go through like thousands of kids to find. And part of the reason why they say is because Anne is so much more often than her brother playing opposite Nicole, and in scenes where she's kind of having to match energies with Nicole. And they were like, think how hard it is to find a tiny child actress who can go against Nicole Kidman,
who is like such a presence.
Yeah,
and that bitch is like tall too.
She's 5'11". I found out.
Okay,
yeah,
that's what I thought. I was like, she's a big bitch.
Yes,
she's a tall bitch.
Yeah, she's a tall lady, and so like, yeah, that's gonna. Not every tiny human is going to be able to match energy with that. And they really found a kid who holds her own in those scenes. Which,
absolutely.
Yeah, incredible. As I said, takes place in the Channel Islands, which closer to France, but kind of combination of French and English culture. But the film is shot almost entirely in Spain. There's one exterior that they shoot in England. The entire rest of it is in Cantabria and Madrid. They find like one of the only Gothic architecture buildings in all of Spain and shoot there. Shot by Javier Aguirre-Sarrobe, who Amenabar tells to work from the idea that, quote, light kills. Which I'm just like... As a cinematographer, that's such a fun thing to play with. Yeah, because you know the cliche of filmmaking is that it's painting with light, right? And this film is so much about painting with darkness, and painting with absence.
Also, such a direct thing to say, but also so vague.
It's you can still there's still so much room for creative interpretation within an instruction like that. Yeah, and he also pulls a Stanley Kubrick and like. Have you heard about how shooting Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick was like the first guy to light stuff entirely with candles?
Oh, was
that a lot of this film? There are full scenes that are lit only by candlelight, which is so glorious. And I think part of why it has a very it feels like it's set in the Victorian era, even though it's modern, even though it's 1945.
Yeah,
because
I had to check myself on that because it did not feel that way.
And part of it is that there's no electric light in the environment. He also, one of the other kind of great quotes on light that Alejandro gives is he talks behind the scenes about the idea of, quote, playing with light as if it was water. Which is something that Nicole's character has a line that kind of references when she's talking about needing to close the doors like it's a ship so that the water doesn't escape. But that idea of like light waves versus water waves, that also, kind of comparison.
Just how the verbiage we use of like lights flooding the room too.
Yes, so, it's so...
It's so interesting.
It's fascinating that we use language that is so aquatic for describing light, and yet I've never heard a director say something like that before, or treat light in quite that way. Because this film does make you really incredibly aware of how light seeps into a space, or like escapes through cracks. Like it's... it's very watery.
That's so funny. I've never noticed we talk about light in the same way water, like light leaking in.
Yeah.
You just blew my mind.
He
just blew my mind.
This boy is a genius. What can I say? There's a lot of motifs of threes in the film. So you have, there's the mother, daughter, son. There's musically, he keeps coming back to this 3-note refrain that's kind of central to the melody. It's very much kind of doing a Holy Trinity thing, which particularly going back to like the Catholic themes, there's a lot of that going on. And talking about the music, he would bring in pieces of the score to the set, which it's so satisfying.
I feel like if I were to ever be an actor, because I've heard of actors putting like earpieces in to like get emote, because music really, I can like cry on a drop. Like it just
it gets
goosebumps.
You there.
I see things. So like when directors do that, it gets me so excited. That's when you brought in your music. I was like,
it's
for
so
your film.
it's so satisfying.
So
well, and it's amazing. Nicole especially just like gushes about how cool this was to be able to hear not just music that's like the tone of what it's going to be, but the actual music composed by the director on the set.
That's so cool.
It's such a great way to tap into what he's looking for from you. And this was really important for working with the child actors too. Is we talked about this with Hausu too. Music is a great way to communicate emotion to younger people, and so that particularly for the more melancholy scenes is part of what he uses to bring out that sadness in them, is just playing the music for them. And one of the producers who's interviewed in the behind the scenes material says that because obviously he didn't compose the whole thing before he shoots. So there were some scenes that he didn't have music for yet. And when he would get to those scenes, he would be sitting behind the camera humming as he's watching the actors, trying to kind of think about what it's going to be. And it's just like, I've never seen another director do that.
I love that.
It's so, and I imagine it would also make you feel kind of more at ease too as an actor. It's like, everybody's creating here at the same time. Yeah. We're all in process together.
I was going to say in process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So as I mentioned, music is helpful for the child actors. The other thing that they do for them in particular is they have, for any of the scenes where the kids need to kind of startle, they have the AD off camera banging wood blocks together.
Oh God.
Which at first I was like, that sounds kind of fucked up. And then they cut to an interview of the child actors talking about it, and they're like, and it was so funny. And I'm like, okay,
they're fine.
They're fine. Yeah. So just, I can confirm from watching the kids, they seem totally fine with it.
I wonder
thought
if they
it was
asked,
fun.
like what sound would
I
make
imagine,
you jump and
probably.
you'd be okay with.
Yeah. And it's like pretty small wood blocks too. But like
still that noise, ugh. Well, I can like hear it now, like the skin crawl.
And it's, I just loved that it seemed like everybody felt good about how it was done. That's so often not the case. So okay, speaking of IMDb though, because I know we've talked a little bit about IMDb inaccuracies.
Yes.
I have to shout out an IMDb inaccuracy that led to a tidbit, actually, about postmortem photography, which obviously huge plot point here. Something I imagine both you and I have read a lot about. I feel like that's safe to say. Absolutely. And the IMDb page for this movie correctly mentions that this was a common practice in the 1800s, beginning with daguerreotypes. IMDb also notes, as the movie does, that for a lot of families, the postmortem portrait would be the only portrait that you'd have of a loved one. But where IMDb gets it wrong is that it stops there. And a big part of the reason that postmortem portraits were the only picture that you'd have of a loved one is because these photographs took so damn long to take that, particularly when you're thinking about children, it's very hard to get a child to pose still for an exposure that takes like 10 minutes, you know? They're going to be moving around, they're going to be squirming, they might start crying, they're going to blink, and all of these things could fuck up the photo. And when a photo is that expensive, a dead person is a lot easier to photograph.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten, I got one at Ren Fair that was wasn't like the tin types that we did. We had to have little metal things on the back of our necks to keep us from moving because it was like a 20-second hold, and we were still blurry. Yeah. It's hard. You don't realize like how.
And you're an adult, and that's 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And like there are ones that are drunk adult seems pretty similar to like a sober kid.
They were all drunk back then, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, we had a hand raise over here.
Because there was no lighting for that setup either.
Oh, we had no lighting. Yeah, we were outside.
Which is another big part of it is the amount of light required for those photos. It's so intense, which again, you put a little kid in front of that, they're going to start squirming. And so it's just a lot easier to photograph a dead body, which is something that a lot of people don't. It still is a lot easier to just photograph a dead body, speaking from experience. And so like, I wanted to shout that out.
Yeah.
And then in the process of researching that, because I was like, let me just double check that I'm not getting this wrong.
Sure.
I stumbled across another concept that I'm curious if you've heard of that feels very applicable to this film.
I wonder what you're going to say.
Have you heard of hidden mother photography?
Yes. Holding the baby.
So scary.
Looking at those, tell the people.
Yes.
It is one of my favorite things. I was wondering if you were going to bring this up because that actually introduced me to the rest. Have you guys heard of Hidden Mother?
It is so
I'm like, you're going to do a more eloquent description, but
well, so obviously because as we were just saying, it's very hard to get a baby to behave for that long. A lot of the time the only way they could get a child to stay anything close to still was having the mom hold them, but the photo isn't a portrait of the mother. And so what you get is these horrifying images where like you'll have like an arm coming in holding the baby that's the center of the photo, and then the mother's head is covered in like a drape.
Yeah, they basically look like scenery.
Yeah.
But you can tell they look ghostly.
Yeah, you can tell that it was a mother.
Yeah.
But like the whole point is like the absence of the mom and like hiding the mom.
But it feels haunting because of that.
It's so frightening. And I think again for a Mother's Day episode and for what this film is about and this idea of like the unseen mother and her hand kind of coming into the frame, it just...
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that,
I'm almost surprised that they didn't touch on that in this movie.
Yeah. I was going to say, when they started pulling out the photography again, I thought there was going to be one
like
in there.
a hidden mother. Yeah.
That was like that, yeah.
Yeah. No, they're all dead.
I have a fucked up fact, but it's so far away from
Please.
like...
Wait, no.
Just talking about dead bodies, I just want to...
Fantastic.
I forget what century it was, but in France... something they did was like they would have bodies display on a morgue, and it used to be like it got so big that people on the weekends, it was like if you were a socialite you would be seen at these morgues, so much so they started serving popcorn and vendors would come out, and it was like if you were a socialite, it's like, where are you going on the weekend? To the morgue to see the new dead fresh bodies they would have on display. Kids
I was
would
born
go.
the wrong time, man.
I know. I was like, oh my God, can you imagine the weekend? What are you up to? Oh, like going to see what bodies they have. But they would display them like naked. They would have their clothes hung over them, and people would like. It first started. It's like people would go to see they recognize somebody, so they could help identify, like a person. You know, if you had a lost loved one, you wouldn't have the ability to know if they're dead.
Right.
So that's how it started, but it grew to this point that people would like vendors. It was like to be seen in France at this time. You went to the morgue on the weekend.
Fascinating.
I just wanted to give everyone needs a deep dive into it.
That was such a good tidbit.
I watched like a 5-minute video, but kind of going along the lines of like this fascination with postmortem photography and like the unseen mother. It kind of just all lives in this very like fun space. It's so fucked up.
No, it very much feels connected.
People need to do that for Mother's Day. Go get I know it already happened, but
go get
next year
mother photography.
If you have a mom and you love your mom, go get it and just sit on her lap.
Sit on her lap like a baby. Make sure that her face is covered in a creepy drape. Like, this past weekend I saw David Cronenberg's The Shroud. So, like, get your mom wrapped in a shroud.
Oh my God, stop! Yeah,
that's part of why they're so creepy.
That's the ultimate gift for a fucked up mom.
My mom would love that.
I was gonna say, yeah,
my mom
we
would
know.
fucking love that.
All the horror moms out there.
But that's what is
wild.
so creepy about these hidden mother photography images is like it looks like the mom is wrapped in a shroud, like a death shroud.
It does.
That's kind of the vibe that they're giving.
And you don't always see it at first, too.
Yeah, some of them are more hidden than others.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that you brought that up.
Yes. So let me also just kind of rounding out production facts, take a moment to say here, one of the things that Alejandro talks about, that critics talk about, that Nicole talks about as like one of the best things about this movie is that it like quote unquote doesn't use special effects. And that is not true.
Oh.
So I just want to shout out
what do they mean?
what is true of this film is that it uses its VFX very carefully and very well, to my mind, for this time period. However, almost all of the shots looking out windows are mattes. Those are almost all matte composites, and almost all of the exterior shots, the fog is being added in digitally.
Yeah, I mean,
it's... You can see the behind the scenes footage. They've got fog machines going constantly. It's going to blow away like that.
Yeah,
it's just not going to stay.
Thick.
And so that was like a good 5 minutes of the behind the scenes portion on the DVD was just showing them do matte replacement to add fog in.
But yet they don't do. Okay.
Yeah.
Weird. I wonder what they meant by that.
Fascinating.
You know?
I think what they're getting at is like there's not a CGI monster in this film, but I'm also like, I still don't like... The VFX work on this film, they did a great job on. And that's why it feels like there's no VFX. So like give them credit.
Yeah.
So shout out to the VFX team. They did a great job on that fog.
Holds up so well.
So moving into the release, this is distributed in America by our good old Faux Dimension Films.
I saw.
Comes out in the US first in August of 2001, then a month later in September in Spain. And they do a very smart, unfortunately very classic Weinstein strategy where they started on a small number of screens and expand by about 100 or so every week. And because of that, this film is an unbelievably big box office success.
Oh man.
Do you want to take a guess at the budget versus what it got back?
Weinsteins. I said yesterday the Weinsteins.
God.
But I'm gonna say 25 million.
For the budget?
Yeah.
Not far off, actually. It's 17 mil. So
okay.
Which I think is actually
overdid it.
To be fair, in saying that it was a huge budget, 17 million is pretty small for a period film.
Sure. Yeah. But it also takes place in a house.
It all takes place in one location.
So they don't need to worry about too many things.
There are no CGI monsters. There's not really stunts in this film. So it's like they had a comfy budget for what they needed to do.
Well, that's why that fucking house looks so
good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so 17 mil. How much did it make? It made 215 million. 215.
You are so close. 210.
Oh my God, I think that's the closest I've been in a really long time.
Go, ow.
Thank you.
Look at that. Yeah, so it was
wow.
210 mil on a 17 mil budget. Spectacular. And like, I knew this film did well. I didn't know it did that well.
Yeah, if you wouldn't have said that, it felt big. It didn't. That feels big.
That's huge.
Especially for them.
Well, and especially, like, I very much think of this film as, like, a beloved by film people, kind of needs to be rediscovered type of movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because not a lot of people...
I feel like it's one of those that, like, a lot of people maybe saw but forgot the name of. And, like, you can, like, tell them the plot and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah.
But for it to have made 210 million just blows my mind. It was fourth in theaters its opening weekend behind, and I found this so funny, it was immediately behind The Princess Diaries.
That makes sense.
And actually went up to second at the US box office by the time of its Spain premiere, like a month and a half later. So it climbed over the weeks, which is fascinating, and all the more reason why films need to stay in theaters for longer, because this is why the Weinsteins were one of the many reasons why the Weinsteins were successful when they were. One of the few above board reasons why the Weinsteins were successful when they were was that they gave films time to build word of mouth. And a film like this, I just think there is no way you can advertise this movie that will do it justice. Like, again, we talked about it. All those taglines are great.
Yeah.
None of those convey the feeling of how hard that twist hits.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really one of those that you have to have a friend tell you, no, I promise this is more than it looks like.
Yeah.
Because, again, the trailer's perfectly respectable. It just looks like another haunted house movie.
Right. And I feel like, too, to that point, a lot of the films that I feel like sometimes I cover that aren't successful but turn into cult because of word of mouth, they were all not in theaters as long as they wanted to be.
That's the thing. Think about Jawbreaker. Had Jawbreaker had more time to stay in theaters.
Breathe a little bit.
Yeah. That is so often what makes or breaks a film like this, is whether it has 2 weeks in theaters or 2 months.
Yep.
That's all the difference. So it goes on to become the top highest grossing Spanish film of all time worldwide at the time it's released. And it's still second on that list behind Fast and Furious 6. Isn't that amazing?
I love that franchise now, so I can't even hate. I'd be pissed about 6 months ago. I am very much on board now.
Oh no, I think that's glorious. The fact that this film is right behind Fast and Furious 6 makes me so happy.
They're so stupid. They're so bad. I don't get how this is flawless. But I love it.
It's amazing.
What was the film we covered? Tomas.
The Orphanage.
The Orphanage. That one did really well too.
It did.
Right?
I think that's like eighth on the list or something like that. Yeah.
Wild.
And that one very much feels inspired by this one. There were, however, several changes made from the theatrical release that you watched to the home video version that we both watched this time around. And I'm so frustrated that now I couldn't find anywhere to watch the theatrical version because apparently many of the changes that were made were cutting out lines that made the twist more obvious. And so I'm so curious what used to be in this film that got taken out.
Shit.
It sounds like it was all good decisions because I very much think it's so hard for a film like this to properly walk that line of giving you just enough information to feel like you could have figured it out if you'd worked just a little harder.
Sure.
But not to actually let you find it out too soon.
Right.
That's so...
I'm kind of glad they cut it because, I mean, rewatching it, I feel like they were pretty... obvious. I don't know, maybe not for everybody, but they felt obvious.
When you know, it's impossible not to spot.
Yeah.
Had Travis seen it before?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like our 4th DVD we owned.
Oh, love that. Okay, I watched with my partner who had never seen it before, which was also really fascinating because the entire time she was guessing what the twist was and seeing her
Did she ever guess it?
She never got all the way. And seeing her get closer and closer, she guessed by like 10 minutes from the end, she was like, okay, they're all dead. I'm calling it.
Yeah.
But when it got to the final twist, she was like, I didn't know she was a murderer.
Yeah. That's, what was the line that, because again, it felt like a fresh watch for me. So I kept just saying, like, don't look at me because that no poker face. But the line, it was the portraits that I was like, okay, now I remember they're all ghosts. And then it was when her daughter says, she keeps like something about like she's gonna hurt us again, or she keeps trying to hurt us. I was like,
she's gonna go mad again.
Yeah, she's gonna go crazy again.
Yeah,
like, I couldn't remember if she like actively tried to do something and then found out, or if it was previous. So those were the two that kind of. I also guessed The Sixth Sense when I first saw it as a kid. So I don't know.
That makes sense.
I feel like I just pick up little clues, but it was nice kind of not knowing a little bit or not remembering everything correctly. Well, it makes the journey fun.
It does so much to telegraph that they're all dead that then you think that you've got it all figured out once you figure that out, and it still has one more trick up its sleeve. And that's part of why this film is so satisfying. If it weren't for that last twist, I don't think this film would really work. I think
even it's almost like two twists because the groundskeepers, you're like, oh, okay, I was right. They're dead.
They're dead.
They're alive. Like there's still ghosts in the house too. And then the mother one. So I almost feel like it's these two last twists where you're like, I knew it. Oh, fuck.
Well, and arguably, you could even say there's a third twist in the idea that the living are the ones haunting them, that those are the interlopers, which to me, that's the scariest part of the movie.
I
know. That's the part that I feel like I like drew on a lot in my own film, is the idea of like the dead being haunted by the living. Like that
Beetlejuice,
that reversal is just so
that feels like hell. You're like their last things of like, this is our house, and the thought of like someone coming in from the reverse of it. It's like, 'cause as a dead, like as a ghost, as it's limbo, you can't like as a living you can move, you can go somewhere else, but they can't,
and they also can't communicate, they can't speak, and that in itself is so
sad.
It's so horrifying. So changes made to the theatrical release. Then this hits the award circuit and it kills at the Goyas, which is basically the Spanish Oscars.
Oh wow.
So it gets 15 nominations, 8 wins, and it becomes the first entirely English language movie without a single word of Spanish to win the top prize of best film there, which is really interesting. I have kind of some feelings about. But
I was going to say, I wonder how everyone felt about that. I mean, he's
Spanish. He's Chilean Spanish, and obviously the film made in Spain,
Sure.
Spanish crew. But there is a
But the
part of me
story-
that's like, I don't know.
I almost feel like it could have just been fully set in Spain.
It
Like
absolutely
just,
could have, and I would have loved to
right.
see that. And I think I think then would have ended up feeling a lot more like The Orphanage, and then you
Which I
wouldn't
love,
get, which I
though.
love,
But then we wouldn't. You're right.
and then you wouldn't get Nicole Kidman, which I think is a big part of why this film gets a $17 million
Listen,
budget.
if Alejandro can speak another language,
There you
she can
go.
learn it.
Just pick up Spanish really quick, Nicole. How hard
Come
could it be?
He did it.
Oh my god. Which also, let me just shout out. Apparently, he at least at the time that he was working on this, didn't read or write music. Was just composing it all that year. Yep. Just
he's just learning
a
every
fucking
skill
genius.
very carefully.
Yeah. I love him. I kind of want to punch him in the face.
I know, don't you? People that creative that can just pick up stuff, it really angers me.
Like, how dare you?
It really pisses me off. So happy he exists.
I
but, like,
know.
damn.
So happy he made this brilliant movie.
Yeah.
Hate him.
Yeah.
I love you,
hate me.
Alejandro. Okay, so it also gets nominated for BAFTAs. It gets nominated for Saturns, Fangoria Chainsaws. Kidman gets nominated for a Golden Globe.
Ooh.
And I'm looking down this list. There's like a
Whoa.
page of nominations, and I'm like, why are there no Oscar noms? And I look it up, and particularly because it seems weird, because this kind of film is exactly what the Oscars loves to nominate for foreign movies, is like a movie that's like all in English with American or Australian actors.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they would love.
Especially nominated for Golden Globe, you'd think.
Yeah.
Did it win?
She did not win the Golden Globe.
Okay, but still,
think she
usually the
deserves
noms
it,
are
but
always like,
yeah, usually the same
go
things
on.
get nominated for both, even if one wins. You want to know why?
Why?
Spain didn't submit it. Spain did not submit this film to the Academy Awards. They instead submitted Vicente Arranda's movie Mad Love, which I bet you haven't heard of. It has like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Mad Love didn't even get a nomination. Wasn't even good enough to make it to.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. And they just didn't.
Yikes.
I feel like if they'd picked this film instead, it would have won.
I believe it would have gotten something.
It would have at least gotten a nomination.
Because you're right. All the parts, all the pieces were there.
It has
for a
everything.
Perfect setup.
Mm-hmm.
Wild.
Oh
my god, not submitting it
in my
hurts.
head,
That hurts.
I thought that this film won like an Oscar for Best Foreign Feature.
Yeah,
Because it's like that kind of movie.
It really. I mean, just watching it again, it's perfect.
Perfect. It's exactly what the Oscars are looking for. And I say that with love.
Can we go back and resubmit it? Can we rewrite the IMDb or the not IMDb, the Wikipedia page.
My God.
We go in and change it.
So yeah, just again, this film got robbed at the Oscars. Once again, horror gets robbed.
Yeah,
which I do kind of wonder if that's part of it. Is that it's a horror movie, even though it's elevated horror, quote unquote, it's still horror, and was Spain as a whole looking down on it for that reason. But this is the film that won their top prize of the year, and they didn't nominate it.
The reasoning it didn't get submitted, whether it was like
That's
purposeful
so
or
weird.
like what was going on behind the scenes.
I wonder if even maybe that has something to do with this being an English language film. Maybe they were like, we want to submit something that's in Spanish. I don't know. This is just clearly the best film produced by Spain in like that year.
Was Tom Cruise petty? You know what I mean? Did something happen there where he was like,
I mean, it was post-divorce.
I'll submit it. He just never did. Because he knew it would do
love
good.
this headcanon.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
His last little petty spaghetti before.
Oh my god. I choose to believe. So as you could gather from all of these awards, critics loved it. It currently holds an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, 77 from audiences. Most of the positive responses come down to two things, which are Nicole Kidman's performance and the way the film kind of builds and sustains tension. There's a great quote from A.O. Scott from the New York Times, where he's kind of mixed on the film as a whole, but loves Kidman and does a really good job of explaining why, and says, quote, "The icy reserve that sometimes stands in the way of her expressive gifts here becomes the foundation of her most emotionally layered performance to date," which I think is so true. It's like this film really taps into what is unique about Nicole Kidman as a performer and asks her to dial all those things up to 11.
Oh, I love her so much.
Other directors love this movie too. I brought in a hilarious quote from Anthony Minghella, who's the director of Talented Mr. Ripley and English Patient, who writes that, quote, "The austere oral landscape of the others makes us listen in the same way as we do when disturbed from sleep, decoding each distant rustle in the darkness, assigning it a malevolent purpose. This is the quietest horror movie in years."
Ooh.
Which I do think is true.
That's so true when you really are just so dialed into like, what is that noise? What could it be? And your imagination kind of runs. This movie does do the same thing.
It's an incredibly quiet horror movie. I think it's a really good point. Especially for one that, you know, the soundtrack is composed by the director. He could really overtake that oral landscape. And he doesn't.
My spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, the music is amazing in this. It's one of the first things I noted rewatching it, and I didn't realize
that he did it. Ebert did not love this movie. He gave it a 2.5 out of 4 and wrote that, quote, "In drawing out his effects, Amenabar is a little too confident that style can substitute for substance. As our suspense was supposed to be building, our impatience was outstripping it. As Houdini said, or should have said if he didn't, you can only listen to so much spectral knocking before you want to look under the table." Which, like, God. Drop the royal we, okay?
I was like, gonna say,
oh my God.
Also, why is he being like, well, Houdini should have said this?
I know what Houdini should have said better than Houdini.
Also, like, that's literally, the plot's so good in this.
Yes!
I don't even know what
that's
he's saying
one of
there.
The strongest points of this film.
I'm shocked he doesn't like it.
It feels...
I don't think he likes mainstream things.
Yeah.
He likes to be... I'm just convinced he would just roll a dice and be like, this is the one I'm going to write a
That's so
about.
often how Ebert feels to me, is like, it's completely luck of the draw whether he likes something or not.
That's why critics are like, bless you if any of you are the critics that are listening. I doubt it, because we don't talk about you very kindly. But I just feel like a critic's it's just a fucking opinion. I don't care how much history, how much work, how much whatever you've done. You are still a person with an opinion, and that's what it fucking is. So, like, I could give a shit about a critic.
As someone who used to be a critic, like, that used to be my job, at least in part, was writing film reviews. It is so much easier to write a bad review than a good one. And that is a really hard thing to not fall into, especially if you're doing
you can pick it apart
of them all the time, like Ebert. Yeah, you can be funnier about a bad movie. You can be cattier and wittier, and he loves to do those things. It is really hard to find good, articulate things to say about why a movie is good, in the same way that it is easy to point out why a movie doesn't work for you.
It's wild.
And so it's also just like, if you have a word count to meet, I know this is me being really cynical, but it's coming from a place of having done it.
Yeah.
It is so much harder to fill out a word count with a positive review than a negative one. And I think that's just something to keep in mind when you read critical reviews. Especially when it's somebody who churns out a whole bunch of them. If somebody is like a guest reviewer who came in because they like really felt they had something to say about this film and like asked for an assignment to write about it, that person's gonna have a lot to say, whether it's positive or negative.
Sure.
But if you have to write like 5 movie reviews a week, at a certain point, a specific kind of review gets a lot easier to crank out. Just
That's
saying.
Wild. No, I totally see that.
So I'll just, put that out there. Y'all can feel differently if you want to. I'm sure there are critics out there who would rip me apart for saying that.
Sure.
Again, it's a lot easier to write a negative review than a positive one.
That's your opinion.
That's your opinion. Now, I think, again, this is very widely considered one of the best horror movies of the past couple decades. On that, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. The rights for a reboot were bought in 2020.
No,
I know. Universal got the rights to do a modern day remake, which I'm like, don't set this movie in the modern day. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea.
Well, I don't know. The way we were headed, we're probably going to war, so you could set it into now.
Okay, we go back to the Channel Islands.
No,
there's no electricity in the house
America
because
now.
Oh God.
Set it here in these times.
Too horrifying, Al. Too scary.
Too scary.
Too scary.
There's such a thing as too scary. The horror and horrifying.
I'm especially nervous about that because I think so much of this movie hinges on not knowing what happens at the end. And now we've gotten the others. I don't think you can do the second Others and have it hit the way it did the first time, because we all know what the twist is. And even if you try to come up with a different twist, it's so, because we all know what the original is now, I think anybody is just going to go into watching it and try to pick apart the twist so intensely that they're not really going to be watching for the movie it is.
Yeah, it's not really a good reboot.
It's not a good candidate for it. And I know I'm like hard on reboots in general, but like this one in particular, I just don't think you can do.
When you can't tweak it, right? Like, where do you go from there?
Exactly.
So
and
it makes sense.
I don't think there's any up you can go from here. I think you can only go down. Although, interestingly, earlier this year, Nicole Kidman cited this as the role of hers that she'd be most interested to revisit, which I do find fascinating. I'm like, older Grace, returning to Grace, same Grace?
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're gonna like do something where it's like, you know, there's some like other hidden layer that they didn't touch on. So it's like, oh, they're unfolding this new mystery
in the
of how
world
they can get
of the Others
out of limbo or something like that.
I don't want it.
I know.
I don't want it.
It's stretching.
I don't want to know.
And it's just going to get thinned out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's...
Damn. I hope nothing comes of that.
Me too. The good news is I have not seen any updates on this project since 2020.
Let Universal be busy with
do other
Epic
things.
Universe.
Do other things, please. The bad news is that because they got it through a bidding war, I imagine they spent so much on it that it's gonna come back around at some point. Whether that means it actually gets made or not, or just that it gets sold off to another studio, we don't know. But let's all hope that doesn't happen. It did also, however, get a Bollywood remake in 2004 that I'm a lot less mad about. Looks fascinating. Got terrible reviews, but desperately want to watch it.
Oh my god, same. If you find a copy of that or know where to watch it, please let me know.
Even just the cover looks amazing. I think it's a musical. It looks like it's a musical. I hope it's a musical.
I would assume, right? Because Bollywood films have a
usually
musical element.
have a component.
Yeah.
Okay, so great. Rounding out with Film Theory Rant Corner, and this is kind of short, but I feel like it's been a while since we've had a film where there's room to do a Film Theory Rant Corner, because we've had so much good beefy stuff to dig into that I haven't wanted to, and this time we don't have that much beefy stuff to dig into. Also, I think there's a lot of interesting intellectual components to this film that you could choose to pick apart.
Sure.
And part of what I kept coming back to this rewatch was like most film bros, I am obsessively compelled by movies about movies, right? Or like movies that have an element that is about the idea of the medium of film. And that was so much of what I was thinking about this watch in particular. Was like, this is a movie that's about absence, right? So much of this movie centers on what is not there, and like, you know, the actual twist is so simple. How does it still hit that hard when really, like, it's a high concept movie? You could explain the whole thing in like a minute, really easily. And as I was watching last night, my partner guessed that the servants are dead, guessed that Nicole's dead, guessed that the kids are dead, and still was surprised at the end. And like, what is it that's making that ending feel so fresh? And to me, I think it comes down to kind of this idea of inversion, where, you know, so often we expect a movie like this to be about the unseen dead, and here what you're dealing with is the unseen living. And I think there's something about the idea of being haunted by the living that captures something unique about the experience of loss that most films don't touch on, because most films about mourning are about grieving the dead.
Right.
And this is able to capture, I think, an experience of grieving that's maybe closer to what a lot of people experience, because so often we're not grieving death. We're grieving the absence of someone. The absence of life. Somebody that you know, maybe you know they're still out there, but you're never going to talk again. And so often that's almost as intense, or sometimes even more intense, of a kind of pain. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, that kind of absence or inversion got me thinking about the photographs in the book, the photographs of the dead, and the idea that all film comes from inversion,
Yeah.
right? Like everything, all of the images that we're seeing come from negatives. And it feels like this entire story is almost like the negative
Ooh, I love
of a
that.
Henry James story,
Yeah.
where all the white turns black and all the black turns white. And it feels to me like part of what's so effective about that is like when you see the inverse of an image and like people's teeth are black and their
Right.
eyes are white and stuff
Right.
like that, it allows you to kind of see the hidden uncanny
Yeah.
in a way that I think only film and photography can, because it
Mhm.
is about making you look at what is not seeable.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah, you see different parts of yourself. I mean, we see it in the tintypes when you watch that
Totally.
process of
As you
them.
watch it
It
go from
is
negative to
yeah.
positive, it's like different pieces of the image emerge at
Mhm.
you. And I think part of what's so fascinating about this film is I think it may really be the only film that we're ever going to get that is able to so completely stay on the negative side of that, that is able to
Mhm.
just be about the inverse of what every
Yeah.
other ghost story is. And that's part of why I don't think it'll be able to be repeated,
Yeah.
is like you can only ever have one negative.
Right.
You know, you make the, when you're doing film
Yeah.
work, you make the one negative and then all the positives come from that.
Right.
But you
But it's just
only
the
get that
one.
one.
Ooh,
And
look
like
at you being a little nerd.
I feel like this film is the
It
negative.
is though. It's so true. It does it in such a different way. Again, even comparing it to the films that I said earlier, it's like
Mhm.
it's still like those feel so wildly different
Yeah.
than this one. And I think that's why like, you know, it became so mainstream and popular to a point,
Mhm.
or like you said, people kind of, even if you don't fully remember, you still remember like something about it, whether it's the
The
title, whether it's
feeling, the images from it.
yeah. But that's so, I love that.
Mhm.
Ugh, please no one remake it. I love that. I love
It's
that
too
take on it.
perfect on its own.
Yeah.
It's too perfect on its own. I don't know if that was articulated my best, but I hope the
I think
concept gets
so.
across.
Yeah, I think so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if it made sense to me, I think it's
Great.
great.
Well, I am incredibly sweaty now. That's all the film theory that I've got.
That's
Should we
a great take.
take a break and come back to
Yeah.
some more murderous
Mine
mommies?
is so fluffy compared to what you
Love.
dived into. Yeah, so we'll take a
Fantastic.
break.
Okay.
We'll
Be right back. And we're back.
We had this whole setup. I'm gonna have Trav bring in my prop for the day. Close your eyes, Sienna. Close your eyes.
Eyes are closed. I see nothing. I'm so excited.
Does Warren know this prop? Okay, and here's, I wonder if you can see. Okay, here's the special guest.
Am I allowed to open it?
Yeah. Hello.
Oh my god!
We had one.
That's incredible!
For those of you listening and not watching, I have the Pee Wee Herman doll, the exact one from the movie.
Oh my...
Sans box, and he sounds like this. I'll let him introduce himself. He's most definitely haunted.
Oh,
That's what he sounds like.
that's what I sound like.
There are days. So yeah, this is my little special Pee Wee Herman prop, because I didn't realize it was like a kind of like a little through line in the movie.
Oh my god, I had no idea how Al-coded this was. This is amazing.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Well, because I know I told you I'd seen like a lot of clips from this movie. I thought that I'd seen the whole thing. I had not seen the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually didn't know this movie existed until we played it at the cinema.
This is the most Al movie.
Yeah, it's pretty me.
Yeah. Like one of my notes from afterwards was like, this walked so that like Scream and everything else could run.
When you said that too, yeah. So yeah, Serial Mom, 94. I had just truly, I'm a John Waters fan. I'm a fan of him. Huge fan of Hairspray. Huge fan of Crybaby.
So
I haven't seen the Divine one. I think my mom forced me at one point to watch one. My mom introduced me to John Waters through Divine.
Amazing.
My mom's
As
like
it should be.
a huge like. I found out like really late in life. Apparently, she had a side quest where she lived in Georgia for like 5 years in this house full of gay men and drag queens. I found this out when I was like 27, and I was like, "Who are you as a person?" I don't think I ever knew this woman. Don't know her now.
Amazing,
but
never will.
Never will. So she introduced me to kind of like the John Waters world.
Interesting.
But I'd never heard of this movie prior to our Mother Day selection at
Oh
the
my
cinema.
God. It's one that
Yeah.
this like tells you a lot about my mom. It's one that my mom would reference a lot when
Really?
I was a
Oh my
kid.
God.
But I'd never see like she would just like make like, oh, I'm gonna turn into cereal mom jokes. And like I like
Oh my God. I love
thought
that.
I
That's
knew
her
what
threat.
it meant. Yeah. Yeah.
Not that I can put, what was it?
I put you
in
I
this
brought you
world.
into this world I can take you
Yeah,
out of
she was
it.
like, no, I'm going to go cereal mom
I'm gonna
on
go
you.
cereal mom, yeah. So it's like I like thought that I knew.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Oh, funny.
This I was like scream laughing through this
Really?
movie. I loved it.
Wild.
Mhm.
Yeah, doing research, our films are so tonally different that like you really talked about film. I'm kind of just gonna give you some like fun little stories about things.
That's the note that I want to end on.
Okay,
Fantastic.
yeah, it feels nice and like lighter.
Yeah.
We're doing the reverse watch order for
Truly.
ourselves. But yeah, so watching this, the only thing I kind of knew about it is you had told me, we talked about how it's John Waters' like first true
Studio
and studio, but also baby Matthew Lillard. So we'll talk about that. We have a couple quotes from him.
I believe this is his first screen role, right?
This is his first. He was an extra in a film before this, which will. I wonder if anyone knows what he was an extra in. It's wild. I cackled at what he was an extra in. But yeah, first starring role. So this really was his first
his breakout.
This was it for him, which is so funny because it's just like he's so. You can tell he's new. And a little bit hesitant, but still the Matthew Lillardness of him is there, and I'm so happy to see he really just like
it's like
was
puppy
himself.
Dog Matthew almost.
Yeah,
like, he feels like kind of unformed, but in the sweetest way, which is perfect for the character too.
Yes, yeah.
And it also just so feels like this is where we get Stu from. Like this really just
and the mom on the phone.
Yeah,
you were saying there's like so many references that just feel of this time. I would have thought originally this was not a 90s movie. It almost feels late 80s to me in humor.
Well, and it's set in the 70s too, which is part of it.
Oh, yeah.
In like 73, I think, 74. It says in like the opening card and then it never mentions it again. So you could blink and miss it really easily.
I feel like films like this too that, again, this is a very tamed version of John Waters, which we'll talk about the production and like the reasoning. But it still feels like timeless in the John Waters verse.
All of his stuff kind of takes place in like there's a lot of poodle skirt type energy, you know. There's like it feels very mid-century even when it's not. Type thing.
So kind of I forget that it was the 70s because it doesn't really inherently feel like that.
Both of our films kind of take place in like they feel like they're set in a different time than they are. Yeah,
for sure. So, Serial Mom, the little tidbit I have is obviously the opening credits claim the movie is based on a true story, which we all know it doesn't have to be based on a true story
to say that.
This is absolutely not, but at the time, this is like, I think like one of the reasons it might have not done so well. A lot of people didn't talk about true crime in the way that they talk about it now, because like you got to think like,
oh my God, this is so ahead of its time.
People, so ahead of its time. A lot of people, I think, believed the opening. So there was a lot of like controversy, I think, going on.
People thinking that it was exploiting a real story.
Yeah. Even at the end too, it's like, you know, when it goes back to it. But nothing about this
has
was
a sense of humor these days.
Truly. So that's kind of like put a tiny little pin in that. We'll come back to it. This is obviously a rated R film. It didn't really have discrepancy like some of my others
Which
did.
let me also say, I forgot mine was rated PG-13. One of the only PG-13s
with a mom killing her kids.
Yeah, right.
Yikes.
Wild.
There is a thing on IMDb I actually discovered through this. It's like like a kid. What did they call it? It's on IMDb and it's like mother proofing whatever, and you can go and it like explicitly writes out like on a little meter how bad the sex is, how bad the violence is, how bad like smoking is, and it like rates it for like if your kids can watch it. And I found it wildly fascinating. I'm like, just throw your kids in the theater. They will be fine. Yeah. Trust me, they're doing a lot worse without you around. So a description for people, because again, I didn't really know. I don't know how many people know. This is definitely a huge cult film. The description is: she's the perfect all-American parent, a great cook and homemaker, a devoted recycler, which I love.
That part killed me.
So good. A devoted recycler and a woman who will literally kill to keep her children happy. That's like the most tame way you can describe this movie to someone. I also have taglines.
Amazing.
One of which we know because we put on the poster, which is "At least she meant well."
Did she though?
If you were in someone she loves, she meant
That's
well.
True. This is
if
true.
you weren't, absolutely fucking not. White shoes after Labor Day? Absolutely not.
Fashion has not changed.
The other ones we have, which are longer but fun. She's a fabulous, loving, caring mother who happens to be a serial killer, and the was in there.
Incredible.
Who happens to be a serial killer, which I love. And then this one pisses me off because like grammatically it feels wrong.
Great.
So I have a discrepancy. I'm going to read it how it is. I'm going to let you know what it should have been.
Wonderful.
Which is every mom wants to be wanted, but not for murder one.
Oh, yep.
I don't like that. It's murder in the first degree.
Yeah.
Just say murder. Murder one.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Don't like it.
Yeah.
Hate it. It pissed me off. I had to research that over and over to be like, is this a real thing?
Is this real? Yeah.
Hate it. Writer director, obviously John Waters.
Our boy.
Which I wrote like you love or hate him.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
true.
think there is an
There's
in between with this man.
He's our
you
trash
love-
king.
I know. He's so trashy.
Yeah.
So again, for people who aren't that familiar with him, I don't know who isn't.
Yeah.
But people often say he's known for his outrageous films that combine outrageous subject matters with a sense of bad taste, which is very specific. And then again, people call his films trash films.
He calls himself the king of trash.
He
is.
That's
his description
thing.
for himself. Yeah.
This man is nothing but reading himself up and down.
He loves that. That's the
with
goal.
that pencil mustache.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously he's most known for Crybaby, Hairspray, and then the film starring Divine, of course. And then he also tends to cameo in a bunch of things. He's in Seed of Chucky at one point. He's like kind of pops up in a bunch of places. And so I kind of wanted to give just a slight background of how he kind of came to be. It's very, very brief.
Please.
I'm not giving a history lesson on John Waters for you, but
again, it's the only chance we're going to have on this podcast to talk
yeah,
about him. We
that's
have
true.
to.
So we just have a little bit of like kind of how he came onto the scene. So he began making silent films in 8mm and 16mm, 18mm. What's that? It's a new form.
I thought you were going to say in like 1890 something, and I was like, oh my god,
we see
the
pictures
others.
of him. I was going to say, oh my god, he would have death portraits of himself.
I would be shocked if he hasn't already.
He has the
gotten
hidden
death
mother one, but
portrait.
he's
Yeah.
the baby, and
And
it's just
the
a little
mother.
baby body with his grown head with a mustache.
We need to Photoshop that. We need to.
John, I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
Just come out here, we'll do that. So in 8mm and 16mm films, mid 1960s, not 1860s, and he screened them in a rented Baltimore church for like underground audiences, and kind of like had his little thing, his little group that he'd put together. And so he would like pass out flyers, and that's how people started coming to these, as he would go on the ground floor and get people to come in, which for the 60s in Baltimore, that feels right.
Yeah.
So then he kind of, as he kept making these films, they kind of became a little bit more polished, and so his audience kind of grew with that. But still, as he kind of grew as a filmmaker, he obviously came more into his voice. He became more of the trash
John
king we know.
Waters, yeah.
And so word of mouth, people would talk about these outrageous films. You have to go see it. And then the Baltimore press would also write about it too, hating it. But that all made people want to go all the more. So that kind of shock value worked in his favor. And so by the early 1970s, so like, you know, just a little bit over a decade, which I admire, that's not really that long of a time to build your own name. He was making his feature films, and then he would screen those at midnight screenings at cinemas around the area by what people say is just sheer perseverance. Yeah. So I'm sure he just bullied everyone to the point it's like, sure, you can have our midnight slot if that's fine.
If you I listened to him narrate one of his autobiographies, because I think he's written 2 now. It's amazing. I highly recommend hearing him read it. But like he has the funniest stories about like the
scene,
the shit that he would pull to get his films.
Do you have an example?
I don't have a good one off the top of my head.
So I was like, I kept it super
highly
brief.
Recommend reading it. He's
he narrates his own.
Oh yeah, of
that's
course.
like the only way I think. So.
Absolutely, yeah, highly recommend.
I might have to do that on a road trip because it's just the way
really
he
good road trip listen. Yeah.
I love that. So that's my little brief, just like kind of, he really just self-made, which I admire, and just got more himself, and I think
the flavor intensified with time.
Yeah, and I think where he could have maybe tried to become more like studio friendly, he just said, "Fuck that, I'm fine."
Less studio friendly.
Yeah.
Which I also just like. I just have to shout out, I love John Waters' relationship to Baltimore so much. The fact that he is from this place that is looked down on by so much of the rest of America, that's talked about as like kind of trashy. And he's like, yeah, and that's what I love about it.
Right.
And embraces it, sets all of his films there, uplifts the community there, basically builds the Baltimore independent film scene from the ground up. Like, that is so inspiring to me, that kind of like love for a place that's not been treated with love by the other people who've shot there. Just like I relate a lot to that.
I was gonna say, this is gonna sound wildly out of character, but if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know, I was watching for the first time ever the NFL draft. I don't know who I am anymore. No, I knew what was going on.
Who are you, and what have you done with my owl?
I don't know. She's fucking somewhere else. But you know, just I have so much love for Detroit because that's where I was born and raised, and even moving here to New Mexico, like I grew up in a place and now I live in a place that it both get shit on.
Yeah.
There's, you know, if someone hasn't been there, how inaccurate they talk about it.
Yeah, like coming from a place that's the butt of jokes and then making films about it, just like I love that.
And it's just like, so in that regard, I love him for that too, because I have so much pride for Detroit and there's no I mean, now it gets a lot more love, but even just being here too, I'm like, I will fucking die.
Yeah.
That's on this hill that you were wrong. You were just wrong.
Yep.
I'm allowed to make fun of it. You're not.
Nobody else can.
Yeah. So I feel that really hard. We have our production designer, Vincent Piriano. I hope I'm saying everyone's name right again. He's worked with John Waters before on Crybaby, Female Trouble. So he obviously that's the one I think I've seen. I know there's Pink Flamingos too. I swear I've seen both of them, but I think it was like a 13-year-old Al.
Pink Flamingos you would remember seeing. That's all I'm going to say.
My childhood, we talk about this.
That's fair.
I have a lot to unpack in a therapy session. We have art director, but John Waters, he works with like everyone over again.
Yeah. Which again, I love. And they're all Baltimore people too.
Yeah,
like
he's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
So we have art director David Bomba, which I love the name. He did 2005's Walk the Line, 2006 She's the Man, starring Amanda Bynes.
Amazing.
And then 2017's Mudbound. He's done a few other things, but I kind of like.
Mudbound is great.
He does some like comedic
things. Those are wildly different films, all of those. Yeah. In tone. From She's the Man to Mudbound, that's like
I don't know Mudbound, but it seemed very different.
Mudbound was very dark. Very dark.
So he's just
hello? The others just came. Sorry, guys.
They're not gay. There's a lot of movement today. And kind of like a little fun fact of something he had to work with is the ASPCA actually refused to even allow a fly to die on the set of this. So in the opening kitchen scene, the art director had to make a fake fly.
It's disgusting.
I know it looks extra gross, but I don't know if you've ever like swatted an extra juicy fly. Those motherfuckers do bleed in a way that I'm like, was that Jeff Goldblum?
Ew.
I don't know.
It always is.
It always is. So I love that they were like, no, nothing was harmed. Even in the background too, like they have the bird. Sorry if you guys can hear people talking again. It's just the people in the walls. Yeah. But they have like the birds in the background, but you see that they're not moving. It's just a stationary image, and then when they cut to them, they are moving. But I just love that there was care.
They literally wouldn't hurt a fly.
Wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yeah.
I would. We have costume designer Van Smith. Again, he worked on Crybaby, Pink Flamingo, and Hairspray. Music by Basil Poldoris. He performed the score was performed by the Utah Symphony in Salt Lake City. And Basil worked on music department for many films. He did The Hunt for Red October, which weirdly I was talking about the other day, The Blue Lagoon, Free Willy, and composed RoboCop.
Oh my god, amazing. I also just have to say, I think it's hilarious that this score was composed in Utah, because that means there were almost certainly Mormons playing the music for this movie.
I know, that's what I'm like, is there any other type of person?
That's so
sorry,
funny.
everyone.
Like, I know they weren't all Mormons, but there had to be at least
Mormon
one
adjacent,
Mormon
or like
in
a couple
there.
Mormons. Yeah. And they're like, oh, it's just this, what are we scoring today? We don't want to know.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you who directed it.
Some Mormons are a little bit
That's true.
different than you think.
That's true. Not all. Hashtag not all Mormons.
If we're gonna leave with anything, I wish we named our episodes sometimes so we could have it be hashtag not all Mormons. No one would watch any of our episodes.
Yeah, that would be such a terrible marketing strategy. I want to do it so bad.
Again, sorry guys, I don't have a lot of information,
this
so the
is what we got.
Needed.
Yeah.
But kind of speaking of music, I found this so fun. I'm curious if anyone knows this, in this room at least.
Mm-hmm.
There's that scene in Serial Mom, where the neighbor is like sitting and watching Annie, and the song Tomorrow comes on. And so obviously they had to pay copyright for that.
Yeah.
Typically, the song specifically Tomorrow would range from like $50 to $500 for the copyright, and then more famous songs would be like $500 to $5,000 at the time, or I think even currently that's what they stand. They did not charge John Waters that because of the content of his previous films. Can you take a guess at what they charged him? So again, typically for this song, $50 to $500.
$15K.
$60,000. And they paid it. They were like, we want Tomorrow and we want Dogs Licking Toes.
And that is like the grossest scene in the whole movie.
That even their most popular song caps at $5K. And they were like, you want it? You're gonna pay up. And he was like, okay.
That's
fuck
incredible.
you. Yeah.
I've got studio money this time, baby.
Shocked, because I was like, oh, $60K, that sounds for like an Annie.
That's incredible.
Sounds right. And I looked and I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah, no, that would be insanely
I love that he
expensive for one song.
Went for it.
That's so good.
See, I don't know.
So
Someone
good.
like me does not know.
So oh my
just
God.
a fun little thing about him.
I love that.
This film is starring the incredible Kathleen Turner as Beverly,
who's like made for this role. She's
absolutely
perfection.
Wasn't the first person up for this role, but we'll get to that in a second.
Interesting.
I mean, I feel like she's one of those character actors. I know she's won Oscars and awards. Like, she's very like known. Yeah. But I know her from The Virgin Suicides. I didn't realize she's the voice of Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I always get her confused too with the actress who's in Casper.
Oh.
Fun fact, if you look that up, there is a big blurb specifically how she's not that actress. And I was like, I'm not the first person to Google
so
this.
fun. Very validating.
The voice. It's the voice.
That makes sense.
Is very familiar. So, again, like I said, she was not the first choice for this role.
Her line delivery on the like, you know how I hate the brown word is just like the most perfect thing I have ever heard. She puts her entire pussy into this role. She really does.
On a level that I don't think any of these actors I'm about to read off. Maybe one of them. I could see one of them, and I'll let you know which one I can see doing it. So the original choice for the lead role was Susan Sarandon. But her acting, or her price to be on the film was too high, so they couldn't afford her.
Oh my! I mean, I think she would have been fantastic.
I think she would have. I really like her. She's sassy as
Is that the one you think could have done it?
No. So the others up for the role, Julie Andrews, which Kathleen Turner in an interview said, well, wouldn't that be funny? Because I don't think she could deliver these.
Yeah, no.
Her image was too...
she'd be too scared, I feel like, to do this.
Okay, these two I could see. The last one, I fucking hate her. Glenn Close, I could see. Meryl Streep, and then Roseanne Barr. Ugh.
I hate all of those. Honestly, hate all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
it would have been
see why you would think of them.
But they don't look...
They're not
For me, they don't look like the mom next door.
Yeah.
She looks like every Midwest mom you've ever met in your entire fucking life. It's the hair,
perfect casting,
the face.
Yeah, and
I don't know if she was wearing culottes, but I assume like if she was, like Meryl Streep's not wearing culottes.
No, Meryl Streep does not have culotte energy. Yeah.
But yeah, wild, heavy hitters to be fair. But I love that they were going after these huge stars.
I could see Meryl Streep having a really good time doing this. I wouldn't want to watch her doing this. You know, like I feel like it would be fun for Meryl and nobody else.
Yeah. Yeah. She'd be like, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. So I have a little bit of how Kathleen Turner came about the role. So again, a lot of the sources were a lot of interviews. It was a lot of the same thing over and over again. So I tried to piece things together where I could. So John Waters was interviewed about the movie, asked about casting Kathleen Turner. and said that the other actresses that I just had mentioned had expressed interest in it, but he kind of got pissed off with the things that they wanted to change. So he ended up not going with the actors that wanted to do it, because they would either ask if they could rewrite the script to make Beverly less malevolent, or saying they couldn't sign up for a role without doing a cast reading first. And he was like, no. I'm going to pick who I want to pick.
Yeah, trust me.
And so even though like Meryl Streep and Susan Sarandon was too expensive, but like fucking Glenn Close showing interest, he was like, this is my way or the fucking highway.
I love that.
And so when it was brought to Kathleen Turner's attention, she didn't say those things. So he's like, okay, love you already. And basically immediately cast her as the role. So like on the flip side of that, from Kathleen Turner's side of things, it was in a Vulture article that I want to say was like 2024. These were really recent interviews that I found with them, like 2023, 2024.
I guess last year was the 30th anniversary, so maybe there were some. Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry.
Old. Stop throwing dates out here. So she said she at the time had only seen Cry Baby, and that didn't see any of like the Divine films that most people had talked about. So she was like, I saw the Johnny Depp one.
That's fascinating, because she's giving it feels to me, as somebody who loves Divine era John Waters, like she's giving a very Divine inspired performance.
She said she wasn't. She said something that was like, ugh. She was like, I wasn't aware of the Divine stuff at the time.
That's wild.
Yeah. So kind of that wasn't what drew her to this project.
Interesting.
She said she was actually kind of horrified by the script at first, and she said, quote, when he sent me the script, I thought, well, of course I'm going to read it. I got to the point where she sticks the poker in and pulls the guy's liver out, which is like, I love that moment.
It's so good.
And she went, no, gross. And she threw down the script.
Perfect, because that's what her character is doing. She's like, ew.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And she goes, I threw the script down in my office and puttered around, and then I went back to it. And so she continues like a little bit later. She goes, anyway, I threw it down again and again and again, and I went back and I finished it. And I thought, okay, this will either be the height of absurdity and humor, or it can be a gore fest, which I do feel like it's both.
It's both.
So I called John and said, here's the deal. I need to know exactly how you would shoot this, because if I'm going to be in a gore fest, that's not for me. I don't do that. And he said, no. Are you going to be home this afternoon? I gave him my address, and 4 hours later, John was ringing my doorbell. So he did and he talks about it too. He goes immediately to her house, shows up. He has a script on hand. He has all of his storyboards, and he like walks through exactly how he's going to shoot it with her. So he came very prepared. Fun fact too, one of the scenes that really got her, which of all the scenes, you'd think it maybe be like the liver poking, it's the hairspray scene with the fire. She really didn't want to shoot that part. So it's something she tried to ask him multiple times to change, and he's like, absolutely not, we're not doing that.
It's glorious.
So she did it. But it was the one thing, I think that was her only real contingency of like, she really hated reading that, and she really hated the day they got to set to shoot that too. I don't even think it's that bad. I was expecting it to be way worse. She thought it was like over the top.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but he was like, no. So he shows her all these things, and she said she then like rang her agents like, I want to do this, and they basically told her, you can't work with John Waters. He's a B movie director, and you don't do B movies. It'll ruin your career. And it's even rumored, and she kind of says, I don't remember this specifically, but she's like, yeah, he probably said this. Michael Douglas, which she was in a film with prior to this, also tried to get her out of this project. It was like, you should not do this. It's going to be a career killer. And she said, what did she say? Oh, so this reaction from everyone around her kind of made her be like, fuck you, I want to do this. And so she said, quote, what was I, some kind of institution that had to be put in a glass case? The crap with that shit. So I said, yeah, well, watch me. Which the attitude going into this character.
That's perfect. Yeah. Again, exactly what you need.
Yeah, and it didn't kill her fucking career. No. So everyone was wrong, and I love that she kind of just wanted to prove everyone else wrong, because I do feel like that's my envision of her as an actor, as a person. So yeah, I love that from the get-go. The two of them were just like, that's fuck everybody. We have Sam Waterston as the dad. I don't think he ever formally gets a name. He's just like the husband, the dad. So I forgot he's Nick Carraway in the 1974 The Great Gatsby.
Oh my God,
which we watched in high school so
wild.
many fucking times.
Wild.
He's Jack McCoy on Law and Order, which I think most people know him from. That's where like I think I visually recognize his face from.
Sense.
He's also was on an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Oh.
We have Ricki Lake as Misty, the daughter. She's obviously an icon of John Waters. She had her own talk show. She's Tracy Turnblad in Hairspray, Pepper Walker in Crybaby, also making out in that one all the time. We have Matthew Lillard as Chip. Like we said, this was his first starring role, so really it was his first movie. But him being an extra, the movie was 1991's sequel, Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies Go to College.
That feels so appropriate somehow.
He's just, well, that's the thing, is first ever on screen, and he's in a horror.
Yeah.
And he turns out to be our little horror.
3, that's so perfect.
Which I need to watch and like see if I can spot
see if we
him.
can spot.
I can't even imagine how baby he looks in 1991.
3 years before this? Jesus.
Just diaper and just rolling around in the background.
He's just in the back of his shot, just like,
yeah, just crying.
Yeah.
Fresh from the womb. He also was not their first choice for this role. Initially, they auditioned Will Wheaton, which is a wild casting choice.
That's so weird.
Because I just...
Yeah, no, wrong.
I feel like that's
wrong.
I knew you were going to have a reaction to that. And kind of in like a fun little first film moment for Matthew on this was he kind of noticed that Kathleen Turner had memorized everyone's name from the call sheet. And so he asked her like, why are you doing that? And her reply was, oh, honey, that's the first thing you do.
I love her.
I know. She's like, no, that's what you do. So
she's like, let me be mom for a second. These are the rules.
Also in interviews, she always says honey after everything. And I'm like, oh, so cunty.
Gay.
I love her. And then I kind of have a retrospective from him as well, talking about this experience on set. Excuse me. And he says, quote, early on in my career, I look at how John Waters directed Serial Mom, my first film. That's such a seminal moment in my life because I'd never been on a set. I mean, I'd done independent films or whatever, but to be on set with Kathleen Turner in that moment when she was an icon, with Sam Waterston, who is an icon, and with this iconic director, I learned everything. It sort of set the table for the rest of my life, which was fantastic. Aww. So I love that he gives like so much. I know. And this was like a 2024.
That's so sweet. I'm so glad he had a good experience.
I just love him so much. I can't. We need to like have a Matthew Lillard episode. When's his birthday?
Truly.
Macabre Spirits, call us. So we also get our director cameo from John Waters. Trev noted it. I'm not sure if you noted it.
I put it in the fun fact for the JCC.
Oh, did you? Oh, that he's Ted Bundy. So that's where we get his little,
Which is also,
you can't hide that voice.
I think that's a historical anachronism because we hear that Bundy is like already been executed because he's sending her a tape from death row, he says. And it's like 3 days before my execution, and I don't think he was even in prison in 1974 when the movie takes place, but it's fine.
Yeah. There's a lot of those things I don't think.
Yeah, that's not what this film is about.
I was gonna say put a pin in that though, because I have kind of like a point to talk about all the serial killers in this.
Because John Waters from this film clearly is like a serial killer geek himself.
Oh yeah,
you can feel it.
Yeah. A little fun character name fact too. There's a character named Dottie Hinkle in this, and that was an actual person's name who worked as a clerk at the courthouse that they shot in. And so apparently production did not know this, ? I don't know how this escaped everybody. But once Dottie found out, she luckily had like good humor about it, so she did sign a waiver and was like, it's totally fine, you can use my name. I would want it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That sounds hilarious.
But I think it's one of those moments where like they could have gotten sued by using someone's government name.
Sure could
also
have.
Dottie Hinkle, it sounds made up.
That really sounds like
a Pee Wee Herman name.
Well, and especially because that's the character played by Mink Stoll too, which is like one of John Waters' like frequent collaborators. That feels like a name that they would have like come up with together. That would have been like a joke name.
I bet they like heard it and then someone brought it and they didn't think the question if it was real.
Yep, that sounds right.
And there's a bunch of cameos. I think he pretty much has like everyone from Crybaby in this at some point.
Yeah,
Tracy Lords.
So hot.
She's so pretty. She's like unreal pretty.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Her hair in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Her hair,
in general,
her.
just her.
But so you'll see a bunch of cameos. I'm not going to walk through all of them, but they're all there. So I unfortunately don't have a ton of like script and pre-production about this. Just that originally this was going to be a Columbia Pictures film before it ended up at Savoy Pictures, which I went down a rabbit hole of reading about Savoy. It was like there's so many like absorptions and drops in this. It was just kind of like one of those that
Ship of Theseus type situations.
Yeah, just kind of like came in and then left in the night kind of thing. So budget for this, which I'll tell us what we made later, but budget, can you guess roughly? This is his first studio
film.
So I think for that reason.
Instinct is like around 15 mil.
Yeah, it's 13.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
Yeah, which feels like right.
Yeah. So our films were actually not that far apart budget-wise.
17?
17, yeah. And like a couple years later. So like pretty fucking similar.
Wild.
That feels wrong. It feels
horribly wrong.
Yeah, now that I'm saying that, I'm like, I feel like the budget should have been higher.
It should have been bigger.
Yeah.
Because it looks better.
It really does. Which is also clearly like that's the John Waters aesthetic, is everything looking kind of fake.
Yeah. Which we're going to talk about. He tried very hard not to make him look fake. So
really?
We're going to get into that now, though. So he filmed in Baltimore, like we said, and Townsend, Maryland. This was the first time he built sets entirely for everything. So including
it looks like it.
Yeah, it looks like the films I made in college.
Yeah.
So including the interiors of Beverly's house, everything was done in this warehouse.
That is so fake.
I know, it's so bad. Again, the birds on the outside just not moving.
Which, like, again, I assumed that was all intentional.
I think he tried really hard to like step it up a little.
Oh,
but
no, John.
He's John Waters, though.
Yeah,
what are you gonna do? I don't think he tried to look. I don't know. He says he tries to look real. Anyways, so he said, again, it was his first time building all these things. He said, "quote It was also the first time where him and the production designer had to make it look kind of real, and all the other movies were in a fantasy world of lunacy, but this one took place in the real world. So I think they tried their darndest to pull it together, but when you have an aesthetic, you can't fight it.
No, it's true. Like it
looks
like a John Waters film, and I think one that looked really grounded would not look like a John Waters film.
I think it would have like not been a cult film at all. Yeah. Everyone would have just been like, ooh, that era. So the video, they did use a real location. They used they used the video store in the film was his actual video store.
Oh my god. And I love that it has a Death Becomes Her standee.
Yes. Yeah. Truck pointed that too.
Made me so happy.
Yeah. So it does still exist. I can't remember what the original name was, but it's called Beyond Video now, so you can still go. Wow. The club scene where the mosh pit happens was Hammerjacks.
Amazing.
In Baltimore. I don't know if that's still around. And then the high school used was Townsend Senior High, which Divine actually had attended, so that was also real.
Oh.
And then they said the hardest location to shoot or secure was actually the church, which I can only imagine.
For John Waters, that's
He's like, no, we're making a fun family film.
This is something that I ran into a lot on mine, where like I would go to look at churches and like I could only find, because my movie's a horror movie, I had to use a deconsecrated church. Like you have to find one that's like not under the control of a parish currently a lot of the time. I mean, otherwise they're going to ask to read the whole script, and like they wouldn't have liked the script.
Yeah, they wouldn't have liked yours. Yeah. His, absolutely not.
No.
So yeah, the secured one, I tried to find information on like what, how, all the things. Could not. That's why I have it like gray highlighted to go back to. Couldn't find anything.
Great.
Obviously, so talking about, we're kind of like rounding towards the end already, sorry guys, but the kind of commentary around this film, like you had pointed out, it was obviously like this critique on society and us turning celebrities, or turning serial killers into these celebrities. Because I always say too, like, especially having worked for a true crime podcast, you know, a lot of true crime podcasts now really try to give attention to the victims, but it's like, for all of Ted Bundy's kills, how many victims can you name?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just not the culture we live in. But for 1994 to be making this critique on society already, if this were to come out now and it'd be like fresh, or even like 5 years ago or 10 years ago,
it would still feel very like, like current and of the times.
It's like, oh yeah, no, this is actual, but like for him to be doing this before that dialogue was really happening, like now we really critique, and to kind of give like, I'm going to jump a little bit to give a little context. a few months after finishing shooting and prior to the film's release, the O.J. Simpson trials were going on. And so that became headline news.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And to have this kind of come out, which I feel like that took center stage and people stepped away from this because everyone was watching that. But it was just like, what perfectly timed, like, and that's really when I think
the flip happened.
Yeah.
Because everybody was watching that live on TV.
Yeah, it felt like a reality show at the time. So for him to be making this and having that break in the news, I can only imagine what his reaction was.
He must have been delighted.
I'm sure he loved it. He's like, well, fuck my film. This is great. This is really
so much more entertaining.
Yeah, so that's a little context. So I found this article on Hollywood Suite that actually breaks down all the serial killer references that John Waters makes in this. So, like, obviously John Waters loves horror. I would say he's fascinated by serial killers in the way that I think we all kind of are.
Yeah, you can tell that he's read a lot about them.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm not going to read all of them because I think there were like at least so many. 15 or something that were referenced, but I picked a few more obscure ones that you might not have noticed. I think one of them was too, and I can't remember who, with the Patty Hearst or Patricia Hearst as she's credited. Everyone needs to go read about her. So she's
amazing.
A wild story. So like there was like a little reference in there with her shoes.
And she's in the cast somewhere. I don't know where, but she's credited.
She's the I believe she's the blonde at the end with the shoes. That's Patty Hearst, yeah. So that's the little nod
she's
to
the
her.
juror?
Juror number 8, in fact. Isn't that wild? Yeah. So that's one. I didn't write about it because there's like too much to say about her and I didn't want to spend too much time on one specific person.
It always makes
everyone go online and read about her. I was like, wait, what?
It makes me think of go back and watch Schitt's Creek because Moira Rose has an episode where she does a one-woman Patty Hearst show. Oh
my God,
it's incredible.
Stop it. We just did a rewatch. Stop it. But yeah, so that's one of the little references, little Easter eggs. I picked two more, a little bit more obscure references. So we have Richard Speck.
Love Richard. I shouldn't say love
Richard.
Yeah. See? Love reading about Richard Speck. Let me clarify.
So, I was gonna say, I think we all know, like, wrong,
fascinating,
not good person.
Fascinating case.
Yeah. So he, the gist of him, if you don't know, he broke into a student's nurse dormitory in Chicago. He held 8 students and nurses captive and then tortured and murdered each one by one in 1966. So in Serial Mom, we see the dad finds a signed portrait of Speck posing as a strongman addressed to Dearest Beverly under the bed. So that's that nod to that one, which I love. We get like 5 in the first 5 minutes of this film.
It's so fast.
We have a Lizzie Borden reference. I don't even think we need to talk about her. But so the reference with her is we'll see a VHS of The Legend of Lizzie Borden from 1975 and a TV movie starring bewitched Elizabeth Montgomery as Lizzie Borden. She's on display in the video store that Chip works at. So there's little things like that woven without, they're pretty much, nail meat coffin. They're right out in the open for you.
I remember there was a John Wayne Gacy one. There's
so perfectly teed me up. So there is a John Wayne Gacy. A little real life tidbit about John Wayne Gacy is the Christmas card in Beverly's serial killer scrapbook that she has.
Is it a real Gacy card?
It belongs to Dennis Dermody, who I looked up. He was Paper Magazine's longtime film critic. He was for 30 years and he collected a lot of artifacts. I think he's probably a huge fan of or donated to Museum of Death. So the card was hand painted by John Wayne Gacy and sent to Dennis as a child. So he had this from his childhood. And so John Waters asked to borrow it for the film.
That's incredible.
But I'm like, I wrote a script about John Wayne Gacy. I was so fascinated with him living in Chicago, being a filmmaker.
Sure. Yeah. Also being queer.
He was my first real he's super interesting to pick apart.
There's a lot going on with this human being.
But I can't, I'm like, what is the did he have a birthday party? And then he got a card as a thank you. You know what I mean? I'm like,
what happened?
That piece
of
fascinating, wild history. And going to LA, they have the Museum of Death, and there's displays of artwork of Manson and Gacy and stuff, and just see that stuff in real life has such an energy to it that's so it's kind of unreal to walk. Some people can't go. I love it naturally.
Not
but it does, like, you leave with this energy where it's like, ooh, I gotta just shake that off really quick.
Take a shower or something.
So, but they don't reference that in the film, and actually it's like not as well known of a thing because they didn't really like outwardly tell, like, no one should know that. It's just a little like hidden.
I love those
treasure.
Kinds of tidbits.
Yeah. So I thought that was really creepy. And then of course we have references to the Hillside Strangler, Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, all of them. And again, to have like the idea that the O.J. Simpson stuff was just swirling right outside. You know what I mean?
And I love that she tucks her Manson photo into her fucking birding book too. That was so funny.
Yeah, to have like the... I'm like, did she just change the dust jacket on that?
And she's like, and I'm going to tell you all about all the birds on the eastern seaboard, and opens it up to Charlie.
So you keep those dust jackets so you can just do a little switcheroo. Yep. So this film was screened out of competition for closing night at the 1994 Cannes Film Festival, which I
What a
love.
great closing night film. That's
Can you imagine? What a light little like, oh, this
little breath of fresh air.
Just her fucking screaming pussy on the phone.
Her performance in that scene was magnetic. The way her face changes as she does the different voices is just incredible.
And then just the wraparound of like, she kind of terrified me in that a little bit.
Yeah.
And now I get why you kind of Siena had sent me like a little message, like, I'm not going to say much, but I can see where Wes Craven got some inspiration for Scream. And I'm like, oh my God.
The phone. Yeah.
Truly. That like evil little, put the little voice effect on her.
Yeah.
They need to put her in a Scream installment, like one of the new
they
ones
should.
as a killer.
Yeah, get a
that would be
incredible.
The deep lore that you would have to know.
Get them both back.
Oh my God.
Little serial
Hello, if anybody listening, that would be
Ghost
wild.
of Wes Craven, hello?
That would be wild. Ghost. Anyways, so went to Cannes just to play and have a good like see you later. And then released in theaters April 13th of 94. And so it gross, this is where we get into, so it cost what did I say, 13 million?
Yeah.
And so in its opening weekend it made 2 million.
Oh no.
And it ranked number 11 at the box office, and then it quickly fizzled from there, and it only ended up making like 8 million roughly.
No. Oh, and
again,
I feel like it's so iconic.
It's
like,
there were
so many lines that I heard from this that I was like, oh, I've recognized that getting quoted before.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I can't even think of a good example. But again, I think it's.
I feel like the Pussy Willow thing.
Yeah, that I feel like
felt like it came up somewhere for me.
Yeah,
so it fizzled all really quickly. I'm also wondering, again, with like everything going on, I'm like, I feel like people were just watching the O.J. Simpson trials. So I'm wondering if that had any effect on it. I also just think, again, this commentary felt so ahead of its time. I also wonder just, him, same with Elvira too, like being self-made, coming up, making a studio production, right? So not really catering to your audience, but trying to cater to a little bit of everybody. Right. I just think a bunch of things came into play. I do have a Roger Ebert quote from him. I read,
feel like he loved it. Did he love it?
He gave it 2 stars.
What?
But his critique was that echoed.
Wow. Louder than I intended it to be. I'm very angry about that.
He gave it 2 stars, which I was kind of surprised by too. But it's funny because reading the thing, like, he does critique it. But I think in the same way me and you would critique it.
Fair.
And then he goes on to say this. So I'm like, I don't even feel like he really hated it. I'm like, I think you, my dude, I think you needed to give this an extra star. At least 3. So he said, quote, "The more I think about this film, the more interested I am in why it doesn't work," which I think is valid. The crucial problem is that since we feel some sort of sympathy for Kathleen Turner's character, we can't laugh at her. But underneath that somehow, I know, is Waters' own essential niceness, which I love. I feel like he's giving John Waters a huge compliment. So I'm going to read this and then I think you're going to. Yeah. So he ends the entire review with, "Waters seems typecast as the author of shocking suburban melodramas, but I suspect that trapped inside of him is the soul of an entirely different kind of storyteller." That's where it ends.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love the love he gives to Waters, and I'm curious as to what he's rated his other films things, which I probably should have come in here with.
I'm so interested
because I do feel like that's such a lovely thing to say, that like there's, and it is like there's sincerity in his characters. I mean, Serial Mom, I don't know how sincere she was. The dad?
I don't think she's sincere, but the movie is sincere to me. And
well,
that's like
the family is like believe and they come. I mean, the dad like never wavers on her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's Goosebumps dad, to be fair, but
well, and like one of the things that I love about John Waters' work as a whole is that he's always felt to me like there is at the core of every John Waters movie is his love for film.
Yeah.
And the degree to which I think like it's like almost like a religion for him in the same way that like Scorsese talks about film as religion, where like the way Chip relates to horror movies in this movie.
Right.
Or like I watched another John Waters movie recently, Pecker, and my review of that was like, this was so sweet. Like it was just so tender towards film as a medium. And like I think that the older he gets, the more I start to see that come out in his films, of this just like innate faith in the power of movies to bring people together at the core of his
he like
films.
has like his I feel like he's such a I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but he feels, with what you're saying, like he feels like such an example of like film is chosen family.
Totally.
And so I think that's what maybe Roger
is picking up on.
Is this sweet bond through film.
There really is like a tenderness at the core of all of his work that is part of what draws me to him. And that's like, that part of what I was totally taken aback by watching this and just absolutely loved was I was not expecting there to be so many Blood Feast references in this movie, which is the movie that Chip is watching on TV, and it's also when we see him sketching, he's drawing the poster for Blood Feast.
Right.
The scene where she does the fire poker with the liver, that's a Blood Feast reference.
No way. I gotta watch that.
I was just so delighted because that's a movie, I've mentioned it on the podcast before. It's Herschel Gordon Lewis. He's called the Godfather of Gore.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And it's one that I've wanted to cover before, but I've like kind of let it fall by the wayside because I was like, nobody knows who the fuck Herschel Gordon Lewis is these days. Like, unless you're like a real film nerd. And it's seeing so much of this movie be like an homage to Blood Feast. Like there are shots that are taken directly from it. And it's like there is just so much love behind every liver pulled out of this in this movie, you know?
Love with every liver.
Love with every liver.
Yeah. But no, it's so true. It's almost like and I hate to like, I mean, we were both theater kids in very different ways. But it's just like, if you meet, it doesn't matter where you are, but if you meet a fellow theater kid, there's
a bond.
There's like a kinship immediately. And I think
you created that with him,
and I don't think the mainstream
they're not gonna get it.
That
I don't think Roger Ebert got it. Like I think he like saw it.
Yeah,
but
he's like, what is it I'm sensing?
Yeah, it didn't. I don't think it embraced him the way it feels to me like it embraces me watching it. Like maybe you just have to be gay,
like right? I'm like, what? You got to be weird, gay and gory.
I think maybe you have to have been bullied in high school to like John Waters. I don't know. Right? Like there's something in there.
It's like I'm not weird. I'm just a sad baby angel on the inside.
Yeah.
But I love that he said that because I'm like, to give it 2 stars and then kind of pay
that review.
Yeah, I just wish there was an extra half star for that.
It feels like a more positive review than a 2-star review.
Yeah.
From the quote you're giving.
Yeah. So I mean, he did say like some critiques, but whatever. It's John Waters. He's not perfect.
Yeah.
So again, I think just to kind of round things out, I have a couple more quotes about it. I think there was a lot of the studio not getting it too in that way. So I have a quote from Kathleen Turner, and then I also am going to end on a John Waters quote as well. So they're a little bit beefy, I'm sorry, but kind of to this, feeling like Roger Ebert didn't get it, the studio definitely didn't get it. She talks about a screening that they had for a test screening, which I think this is the first time John Waters had to do test screenings because he was working with a studio. So that adds some light to this.
Hated that.
Yeah. So Kathleen said, quote, "We're sitting in a screening in LA. This is a young company. The bosses had left their previous production companies to form this company, which is Savoy Pictures. So this is one of their first Savoy Pictures films that they had distributed. Only 3 movies prior to Serial Mom, which are so unknown, I'm not even going to read them. One of them was Lightning Jack. And she goes, I'm sitting in the back row, and the audience is going kind of wild. One of the guys turned to me and said, oh, it's a comedy? And I thought, fuck, we're sunk. They were thinking they were going into a going to publicize it like a crime thing.
No.
And so when they never bothered to read the script is a very good question. As soon as he said that, my heart sank. We had more theaters in Germany than the entire United States. It was crap. So again, just talking about it didn't get a lot of...
That's so fucked. Well, and also, like, have you never watched a John Waters movie
You're
before?
producing something? Have you read a script in your life?
Yeah.
How did you not even read the script?
Who do you think John Waters
A log line?
is?
Anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this is coming off of Cry Baby and Hairspray.
And to say that to the lead.
To Kathleen fucking Turner.
Amateur hour.
Yeah.
Amateur
truly.
hour. So again.
I hope she stabbed them.
Right. Where are they now?
Fire
We don't
poker.
know. Their liver is still living. They're in the Museum of Death now. So to this also, I have a quote from John Waters, and he said it was horrible. The studio hated it, even though it was exactly the script they had bought.
Jesus
and Liz Smith, who I'm assuming is an executive at the time there, of all people, saved us because she wrote she's a critic, thank you. Of all people, saved us because she wrote a column saying, "Leave Serial Mom alone." I think Kathleen went to her when the studio was trying to change stuff. They were furious, and it was the worst experience I had with the studio. The movie eventually came out the way I had wanted, and they probably did lose money, so they were probably right from their angle. So I like how he's like, I get it, their studio, they're trying to make money, but like, this is what you bought. This I gave you exactly what you wanted. I stand by it. I'm glad he didn't feel like he had to change too many things.
Good.
But overall,
Kathleen also helped stand up for him. It sounds like. That's really cool.
And to come from the beginning of her not liking the script, really,
to really standing by it.
Yeah. So flipping. Overall, the ratings for this are higher than I expected. Considering, I feel like this is a weird one. I don't feel like his films get the love they deserve, but it's a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb.
Good.
And then a 63% on Rotten
That's
Tomatoes.
Decent.
So yeah, I feel like it actually
that feels fair.
Yeah, it kind of, who knows what the other ones were. Again, I should have brought those in comparison, but that's all I got. I actually feel like we talked a while.
We actually did. I want to say, I feel like I might have had
you were an
note
hour
at the end for yours. Let me just check. Oh yeah, no, it was just that Herschel Gordon Lewis. Yeah,
love.
Yeah,
we should definitely.
We should. It's. I think
we got a couple more to go. We should do it after the couple we have planned.
Yeah, love.
Or even after the next one we have. Well, because it's going to be your birthday.
Yeah. That's true.
But yeah, fun. I loved. These were like super easy to watch. Wildly different.
So totally different. Yeah. Felt like we had more to talk about than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was comforting.
Yeah, we kind of just got to love on these films.
Yeah.
Which feels good sometimes.
It does.
Just to love
it feels
on them
nice
a
to
little
have
bit.
one where there's like a little more space to like give our opinions.
What do you have to say, Pee-wee? Wow, that's very interesting.
It really does sound like me.
Well, just put your little soul into the Pee-wee body.
How do you know it's not there already?
Ew. Please no, you just sit in my office all day then.
I mean, I already do.
That's true. Rub his little hands together. Yeah, fun.
Yeah, great.
Next ones.
Oh my god, what are we doing next?
I remembered. I almost forgot. We're doing.
I'm just like completely blanked out.
So, you guys are listening to this.
I know what we're doing.
And this weekend, if you're listening to this when this comes out, you guys all get to watch the new Final Destinations Bloodlines, which I'm very jealous that you're in the future getting to do that. I am absolutely fucking seeing it in theaters. So this is our next one's not coming out till after, so hopefully people have time to see that. I'm hoping I have time to see it so I can bring that into the episode. So we're going back to the Final Destination. I feel like I've brought it up a million times, and then we had a really hard time pairing it because
such a hard time.
It just lives in its own. So we were trying to think of like something vaguely
it feels
similar.
like it's almost its own subgenre, like the
it
Final
is.
Destination genre.
It's just a kill. Is there just kills for kill? I guess art. I guess Terrifier would kind of be kill for kill's
I could
sake.
see that. See that, but I feel like that also like needs its own.
It does. We need to just cover those movies on there.
So had a really hard time picking. I'm gonna do It Follows, which was a Warren suggestion.
Yeah,
which I'm
and I
very
think it's
excited for. That feels like
suggestion.
a good. Hearty
just this
pairing.
Can't run away from this inevitable.
And the idea of it constantly kind of like morphing shapes or morphing faces as it chases you. I think it'll be similar there.
It feels very you coded because again, like I couldn't see you covering a Final Destination. Like bless you, I would not make.
I was
that.
willing to. No. I was totally willing to.
I feel like if we did that, Warren had said too, like to cover like the third one or like I just feel like we would have to spend. I don't know. if it's necessary.
I feel unprepared. Like, having never watched any
Once you
of them.
watch one, you've kind of seen them all. But you're going to be excited to see Tony Todd.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Tony Todd.
But yeah, you've all... you're on your way to watching it. I can't wait. I'm so fucking excited to watch the new one.
That's gonna be
which
really
is Tony
fun.
Todd's last.
last screen role.
So, but yeah, I think those are. I'm really excited to watch It Follows. It feels very timely.
Yeah, thank you for that, Warren.
We were
very grateful.
Struggling. I'm like, anything summary, anything with just something you really enjoy.
Bless you. You were trying so hard to find things that I
was like, no.
Yeah,
no.
No. Just
and
like a
Warren
cat
came in with
pushing
the
them all
win.
off the counter. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know.
I'm so sorry.
But yeah, I'm excited about those two. And then
it feels solid.
The month after is going to be your birthday
It's
month.
Gonna be
so
my
we're going to do
month.
birthday picks.
Yeah. So
Which, am I realizing it's been almost a year since I watched Dario Argento for the first time? My life has changed for the better.
I'm so pleased.
So I'm very excited.
So pleased. I've got to do some thinking about coming up with something that feels like it would hit that level for you, Al. But yeah, we're definitely going to play at least. I need to figure out what it's going to be, but I have an idea for a birthday pick that might be a good Punk Rock Wednesday pick.
You should do also the one you just said, the Blood Feast.
Blood Feast? That could be a good
or just in
pick.
general.
Yeah,
we should do that.
Blood Feast we need to do at some
point.
Yeah, I feel like that would do really well with like maybe another Vincent Price movie. Even. Like it's that kind of vibe. Yeah. Cool. Very much in that kind of.
We should watch Ghoulies 3 now at some point too.
Oh my god, we have
Critters
to.
3, Ghoulies 3. We just do the third for no reason.
Rule of Threes.
Yeah,
that's the episode. The Rule of Threes episode. Yeah. Love.
But yeah, I think that's
it.
Oh my god, short, sweet, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Bing, bang, boom.
Are we just like, we're done? We have like nothing to even promote.
Yeah.
Come hang out at the cinema, guys. We're doing cool shit. By the time you're listening to this, we've done the cool shit that we know about. All I know. Yeah. Oh my god, we're like so ahead of things. I can't even promote.
Yeah.
June, we are doing we're doing Saturday nights though.
We are.
And we're playing some SNL. If you're into SNL movies, we're doing like Wayne's World and Night at the Roxbury and stuff.
I'm so happy I'm finally getting us to Screen Bound. I've been pushing for that one hard.
Yeah. So we'll be playing that. We're doing some cool like after party things. So thanks, Warren. For hanging out.
For coming up with It Follows.
Yeah, actually, thanks for that. Big time.
Thank you. That saved my neck.
Thanks, Trav, for talking and sneezing and coughing in
all the things and thumbs up in. And
thanks, Theo, for being there.
Yeah. Our sweet, perfect little baby angel who we never get mad at.
Thanks, Pee-wee Herman. You're welcome. It sounds like
that was a really good. That was a really good response.
Woo woo.
Thanks, Pee-wee.
Thanks for listening to Splice and Splatter,
the film podcast presented by the Jean Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where classic horror
meets modern gore.
And until next time, we'll be right back.